Otaku in the Marvel DC universe. Hey! Look who's back for more adventures. We love having you here to continue this story that keeps us all awake. Important note, all of this is pure fiction, so don't try any techniques you hear here in real life. Your neighbor might call the cops. This amazing novel and all its rights belong to the original author. We're just the ones giving it voice and drama. Are you enjoying the show? Prove it by subscribing to our YouTube channel and leaving that like that motivates us so much. And if you want VIP access to exclusive content, our Patreon is waiting with things you won't find anywhere else. Chapter 601 The Secret of Moving Key. The Taoist 36 transformations of Xiangang are truly great divine powers. Each transformation can be practiced individually, leading directly to the great Dao and pointing to the origin of cultivation. Each level of transformation in this divine power aims to cultivate the laws of the heavenly Dao, thus placing extremely high demands on the practitioner. Those with good talent and sufficient effort can understand the essence of things and cultivation through this technique, reaching the root of cognition, thereby mastering the corresponding rule system. Those with dull aptitude, even if they possess all the techniques of the 36 transformations of Xiangang, may only live a mediocre life, achieving little. The manipulation of creation that Liang Yue obtained is the first transformation of the 36 transformations of Xiangang. It can be regarded as the foundation of these 36 transformations, and also the strongest and most core divine power method among them. The reason for considering it a foundation of the 36 transformations of Xiangang is that, in addition to obtaining the specific cultivation method of the manipulation of creation from the system, Liang Yue also received another wonderful key refining method. However, this is not a method to improve one's realm or accumulate spiritual power, but a versatile key refining technique that can be combined and nested with the cultivator's own techniques. According to the records on the technique, after cultivating this key refining method, the cultivator can more easily understand and comprehend the essence of cultivation. It can help cultivators more effectively and safely acquire external energy, and gradually increase the energy level within the cultivator's body. To put it figuratively, it is roughly equivalent to adding a layer of mysterious filtering system outside the cultivator's body, used to smooth out the mottled and unbearable free energy from the outside world, so that it can be absorbed into the individual in a more complete form. In Liang Yue's view, this is equivalent to an introductory cultivation outline. It has extremely strong applicability. It can naturally be nested on top of the cultivator's own techniques, with almost no conflicts or discomfort. The idea is similar to the immortal martial spiritual key shield he previously improved. It adds an extra step, taking into account the combing and integration of external free spiritual energy while normally practicing key circulation and absorbing the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. It adds a tendency to the energy transportation within the cultivator's body. However, this mysterious method is much more complex than his immortal martial spiritual key shield, and it will take a lot of effort to master it, from regulating oneself, changing the category of things, to subverting the laws and creating the world. It can have a huge impact on the cultivator, which is really fascinating. Manipulation of creation can actually be strictly divided into two parts: manipulation and creation. In Liang Yue's shallow understanding, manipulation is equivalent to regulating, adjusting, and maneuvering, while creation presents itself in a mysterious posture of pioneering and creating. Both can lead directly to the great Dao and reach different laws of the heavenly Dao, but in the process of cultivation, they can complement each other, support each other, and be mutually reinforcing. The method that Liang Yue obtained is almost entirely about guiding people to understand the essence of things, and the specific cultivation methods only occupy a small part. Some specific methods and tricks that can be used to deal with enemies are almost non-existent. It only expounds the correct path to the cultivator from the perspective of rules and essence, while various skills, techniques, and methods in the process of cultivation are regarded as peripheral branches, depending entirely on personal fate and circumstances. After obtaining such a great divine power method that can lead directly to the top, Liang Yue certainly couldn't bear to waste time. So he simply explained some things in the sect to the women after leaving a drop of Danshan Pond energy for each of his 14 disciples. He couldn't wait to circle to Zhanbi City on the shore of Lake Baikal, hold his breath and concentrate, adjust his state, and enter another retreat. But this manipulation of creation is indeed a top-level and mysterious method of Taoism, even if it is only the most superficial branch. That is, the technique attached to this method, which is used to smooth and integrate the external energy and matter of the whole body, took him a full year to try before he barely glimpsed the doorway so difficult. Fortunately, when Liang Yue tried to experiment with this special technique, it would not delay his normal transportation of spiritual power and water vapor energy in his body. Otherwise, he would really suffer a big loss. When Liang Yue initially mastered this wonderful method, a lotus flower would naturally form outside his body. That's right, another lotus flower. However, compared to the purple lotus that Liang Yue cultivated with his Xixa divine art and Xiantian art, this one is not a product of the interaction between the spirit and the nature of heaven and earth, but a circulation system formed under the drive of a special energy operation method. To be precise, it is a functional form of operation that drives the energy and material traveling in the outside world to carry out massive resonance, flow, and inductive movement. At first glance, it seems like a colorless and transparent lotus flower composed of gurgling air, but in fact, the inside is full of mysteries. In addition to the external lotus image, its composition even involves many spatial theories and the construction of spatial nodes. Compared to the method of gathering and collecting ki, Liang Yue actually prefers to regard it as a manifestation of the principle of formation, taking the cultivator himself as the origin, and the power in the body as the brush. He constructs corresponding traces and imprints in the air, the void, and even the nearby spatial interlayers in front of him in order to model a stable structure that spans space, and even the dimensional gap. For the movement of ki, if Liang Yue didn't have some foundation, and possess the talent of virtualization, which allows him to move freely across space and interfaces, and he often read various knowledge classics about spatial theory in the library of the Supreme Master, Liang Yue was afraid that he could not even find the path to get started. It was with the help of this transparent lotus flower that almost all the free energy existing within a certain range around him in this world gathered towards him. What it contains and consumes is no longer limited to the traditional spiritual energy of heaven and earth in the path of immortality outside Liang Yue's body. Within the void, it seemed that all energy began to converge towards him on its own after passing through such a lotus system of transmission and induction. The originally modeled energy body began to be smoothed down, and even the energy properties became more similar. It seemed as if a special label had been attached, and once it entered the body, it could be smoothly operated and digested in Liang Yue's body without causing any discomfort. Instead, there was a sense of smoothness that should be so, and that was destined. After being collected into the Danshan, these no longer purely spiritual powers were absorbed and sublimated again by the thunder firewood tree, and then spread to all parts of the tree. During this process, a large amount of water vapor energy began to emerge, although it was not enough to use the exaggerated word fountain. The thousands of golden leaves on the tree at this time looked very much like atomizing nozzles. A large amount of water mist surged out, spreading down from the top of the crown, covering the entire tree inadvertently. In the light produced by the power of thunder and fire, a colorful glow was reflected. Even the pond at the base of the roots closely followed and glowed with new vitality and color under Liang Yue's deliberate control. The water in the pond and all the spiritual power accumulated in the thunder firewood tree participated in this transformation again through the strengthening of the new spiritual power. It gradually entered another more mysterious level. So, unknowingly, during Liang Yue's retreat for research and cultivation, his cultivation also inadvertently and naturally broke through to the late stage of the foundation establishment realm. Chapter 602 War breaks out. Compared to this lotus of ki circulation, which came with the first transformation of the 36 heavenly changes, the creation of heaven and earth, the purple lotus that Liang Yue cultivated himself seemed somewhat redundant at this moment, but he didn't feel the slightest shame or frustration because of this. The 36 heavenly changes all record famous Taoist divine powers and spells. Among them, the goddess Niu possessed the power to create the world and establish a race because of the creation of heaven and earth, while golden light transformation, also one of the 36 changes, was a method created by the celestial venerable of the origin himself. Even 7 arrows with nailhead, which is ranked at the very end of the 36 heavenly changes, is a well-known and powerful divine power, directly causing many long-established great gods to capsize in the gutter during the investiture of the gods. In comparison, Liang Yue was just a young man who had just embarked on the path of cultivation. The method of cultivation that he researched was now replaced by the introductory technique of this great divine power. At this time, he not only didn't feel the slightest embarrassment, but also felt a little complacent. After all, the Taoist flower purple lotus that Liang Yue created himself was at least consistent in its thinking with the introductory formula of the creation of heaven and earth. Both follow the path of harmonizing external energy and then using it as a transit system to sort out and summarize chaotic spiritual energy. It's just that Liang Yue's purple lotus was just starting out, while the heavenly change magic had already been famous for a long time. Because of this kind of thinking, Liang Yue felt that he must not let down his talent and creativity in this way. He came up with the idea of continuing to transform, strengthen, and upgrade the purple lotus. Soon, another 2 years passed on this day, Liang Yue was busy cultivating while continuing to retreat and do research. Suddenly, the alarm system in the room seemed to be triggered, emitting a burst of ear-piercing alarm sounds. Liang Yue frowned slightly when he heard the sound, and then asked the intelligent brain Xiao Wu. The next moment, his figure flashed and appeared in a slightly dim room with a thought. The panoramic sand table was activated instantly. In just a few seconds, a panoramic model of most of the Earth appeared in front of him at this time, in the vast Siberian wilderness area, that is, the edge of this vast North Asian land that Liang Yue personally seized. Red light circles rippling with ripples were shining from the east and west sides respectively. The next moment, as the resolution changed, the images in the red light circles were magnified hundreds of times in the blink of an eye. At this time, on the west side of the Siberian plateau, two huge troops were invading his occupied area from the north and south routes respectively. Upon closer inspection, these two parts of military strength and armor actually came from the northern regime of Tsarist Russia and the Allied forces led by the Tsar's troops in the south. I don't know how these two regimes, which had already broken their heads and harbored irreconcilable hatred, are now cooperating together. Anyone with a butt knows that there must be a lot of shady PY deals in here. However, Liang Yue didn't want to delve into the petty intrigues. In addition, in East Asia, in the coastal areas of Northeast Asia, Japan also seems to be unable to bear the loneliness, and is cooperating with the Allied forces in the West, launching an offensive towards China. However, compared to the two forces of Tsarist Russia, these little devils appear to be more cautious. In addition to dispatching a fleet of only a few thousand troops to Sakhalin Island, which is nearby, they don't even dare to move troops to Vladivostok, which is located in the Far East and is now developing well. Only a small number of ships and troops were sent to the northeast, which is closer to Vladivostok, intending to land from the sand table. Most of the Japanese military force is now placed in Shandong and Shanghai. In these two places, due to the weakness and infighting of the northern and southern governments in those years, quite a few historical legacy issues have arisen. As a result, they were seized and infiltrated by the devils, and they have not been recovered since. Now, it has become their garrison. But compared to the exchange of fire that has already occurred in the direction of Tsarist Russia, the devils are still relatively restrained at this time, and have not really used guns, artillery, and ships to fight. Obviously, they are waiting for an opportunity, seemingly waiting for the Chinese side to take the lead in attacking them. As for the reason, Liang Yue felt that it might be because the sentence he said to Yuan Datao during their exchange, that other countries would be his responsibility, and Japan was the enemy he left for China, had already been spread out. Of course, even so, Liang Yue didn't think that the islanders, including the Allied forces in the direction of Tsarist Russia, would have the confidence to launch this war against him. After all, Liang Yue had already given them a lot of lessons in previous battles. I believe that before they officially find the power to deal with themselves, they probably won't be stupid enough to come over and seek abuse, and waste their own combat power for nothing. So, they now think they have enough power. It seems that the atomic bomb should indeed be taken out a little earlier. In addition, there needs to be a motive for launching a war. I don't quite believe that those people in Europe would simply run thousands of miles to fight me in order to help Tsarist Russia. Moreover, compared to me, the northern regime of Tsarist Russia is probably a more dreaded existence by those European powers. It's 1936 now, and the aftermath of the economic crisis and the Great Depression hasn't passed yet. Those capitalist countries are still in a trough. Could it be because of this? Also, in 36 years, the Fuhrer should have already taken office, right? At this time, Liang Yue was analyzing the situation while watching the battle on the front line through the panoramic sand table. Unfortunately, because of his intrusion, many events and historical processes concerning China have already changed. Whether it is the war between Siberia and Tsarist Russia at this time, or the islanders' restrained offensive behavior, they are directly related to him. So to a certain extent, the original course of history has been broken, and Liang Yue no longer has a complete grasp of the plotline here. Fortunately, he doesn't care too much about these in terms of Liang Yue's current strength, unless those DC heroes existing in later generations cross over on a large scale. Otherwise, no one on the current Earth is his opponent. Liang Yue is not personally involved in the war on the front line at this time, but those who are trying to rely on numerical superiority to enter the Siberian wilderness from the north and south directions of the Western Front are not having a good time. Although only less than a few minutes have passed since the start of the war, the northern regime of Tsarist Russia and the Allied forces led by the Tsar and the European powers are still suffering heavy casualties. The reason is that in the past 10 years, the intelligent brain Xiao Wu has manufactured a large number of unmanned combat equipment according to Liang Yue's instructions: various self-explosive cards, landmines, armored combat vehicles, remote-controlled tanks, rocket launchers, automatic machine gun fortresses, unmanned bombers, remote-controlled electromagnetic guns, etc., have long been quietly spread throughout the defense line under the command of the intelligent brain Xiao Wu, and with the intuitive battle feedback of the panoramic sand table, the Allied forces with a number of millions are really seeking their own death. Chapter 603 The End of the War. Compared to Liang Yue's series of modern and hyper-modern firepower, the various firearms and war firepower in the hands of the Allied forces and the Northern government's army were also quite advanced in a normal historical process. What they possessed could actually be considered top-tier technology. However, Liang Yue, this intruder, wouldn't reason with them, and the intelligent brain, Xiao Wu, wouldn't, without a reason, consider humanity and kindness in a state of war. Almost a moment the opposing army invaded Liang Yue's territory, the war officially began without any pre-war declaration. When the first soldier illegally trespassed into his territory, he was automatically identified by Xiao Wu as an act of aggression immediately. Overwhelming artillery fire, fierce machine guns, bullets, rockets, cluster bombs, shells, the mother of all bombs from the howitzers, etc. Under the control of the intelligent brain Xiao Wu, they were all unleashed towards the opposing Allied forces in retaliation. In an instant, the entire area within 5 kilometers west of the territorial line was directly covered by fierce firepower. Above the enemy's gathering points and densely populated areas, countless deadly streaks of fire streaked across the sky, rushing towards them. Boom! Bang! Thump! Whoosh whoosh whoosh! At this time, the Tsarist Russian Allied forces, both north and south, were almost immediately dumbfounded despite the various artillery fire and dazzling scenes on the front lines. In reality, under the precise operation of the intelligent brain Xiao Wu, the hit rate and lethality of various ammunition were almost maximized through the real-time display of the panoramic sand table in front of him. Liang Yue could clearly see the scene on the battlefield, with corpses scattered everywhere and broken walls and ruins. Those soldiers who had crossed the borderline earlier had already turned into piles of corpses. Stacked in the dense forests and wilderness, the soldiers on the front lines didn't even know what they were facing. The vast majority of them died unknowingly on the battlefield the moment the artillery fire struck. Only a very small number of people survived the first wave of artillery fire. Then, all they could do was to lie down on the spot, holding the guns in their hands, and start shooting futilely at the dense forest on the opposite side. In this way, after only 5 minutes of engagement, at least 100,000 Allied soldiers were wiped out by Xiao Wu. However, the war did not stop because of this. At this moment, the Northern government and the Allied forces led by the Tsar in the south had deployed at least 1 million troops within a range of several hundred kilometers west of the front line. Their simultaneous advance and joint arrival were obviously not just for show. If their military strength was not completely annihilated, how could their ambition be extinguished? Compared to the military equipment and combat modes of World War I, the European powers at this time had obviously updated their war equipment. At this time, in addition to more advanced artillery positions and automatic firearms, various types of tanks, howitzers, airplanes, etc. had also been equipped and put into use on the battlefield. However, these things were still just clay chickens and pottery dogs in front of Liang Yue and Xiao Wu. At best, they were just eye-catching targets like those soldiers who were covered by a large amount of firepower. Before they could realize what was happening, they were wiped out in pieces by Xiao Wu's beyond visual range strikes, turning into rows of scrap metal. Soon, after suffering heavy losses, the remaining survivors were obviously stripped of their initial sharpness. They abandoned their weapons, with panic and confusion on their faces, and began to flee sporadically to the rear. Facing this group of people, Liang Yue did not make things difficult for them and let them leave. However, in the Allied forces' positions further behind them, a large number of military deployment locations were still the key targets of the intelligent brain Xiao Wu's strikes. Cooperating with the satellites overhead and the panoramic sand table in front of him, a massive amount of long-range firepower was accurately dropped. The military strongholds, bases, camps, and bunkers that had been painstakingly built were instantly turned into ruins under a wave of saturation strikes. In fact, when the North and South Tsarist Russia were building these facilities, both Liang Yue and the intelligent brain Xiao Wu had noticed it early on. Subsequently, not only was the entire process tracked, investigated, and scanned in secret, the scale of these facilities and buildings was also assessed, and a corresponding amount of ammunition was prepared. The purpose was to ensure that in the current situation, these military facilities of the enemy could be completely destroyed at the first time. Now, years of planning have been put into action within a short period of 10 minutes. Thousands of long-range firepower covered the area, and in an instant, all the combat power that the enemy had prepared to invest in this war was destroyed. That scene was truly devastating, like a storm sweeping away fallen leaves. It's just that Diana had obviously missed the firepower intensity of this war. The current time period had already arrived on the eve of World War II. Compared to the combat mode of World War I, it was no longer the same. Not to mention, what she was facing at this time was the intelligent brain Xiao Wu's era-crossing firepower suppression facing Diana. Such a thorny character on the battlefield, Xiao Wu naturally gave her extra care. An idle electromagnetic gun directly turned its muzzle, and a large number of solid buckshot instantly scattered over, directly hitting her so that she retreated repeatedly, and deep marks were directly drawn under her feet. A few seconds later, even the shield in her hand began to be a little unsteady. Subsequently, several artillery pieces fired a volley, instantly blasting this Wonder Woman into the sky. Seeing this, Liang Yue quickly stopped Xiao Wu's offensive. The next moment, he directly drew a circle in the void and stepped into the area where the other party was located. With a sweep of his gaze, he found Diana, who had already passed out, half buried under a piece of mud. So, he reached out and waved his hand, and after clearing away the messy soil, this demigod lady lightly floated in front of him. Afterwards, Liang Yue took this woman back to his handy city. He placed her on a long sofa in the sand table room and gave her a healing spell. Just like that, an hour later, the war ended. In this battle, the north and south sides of Tsarist Russia each had millions of troops who died directly in this battle. A large number of bunkers, towns, military bases, and even cities built near the war zone were directly razed to the ground. Among them, under Liang Yue's deliberate targeting, at least 3 heavy industrial cities were destroyed in each of the Tsarist Russia's 2 districts. Now, on the battlefield, apart from about less than 10,000 scattered wounded soldiers and a small number of lucky fleeing soldiers, who are still scattered on this vast land west of Liang Yue's borderline, within 500 kilometers, there are no more people capable of fighting. After finishing, Liang Yue was not satisfied. After thinking about it, he found several military-industrial towns in the western part of the North and South Tsarist Russia and gave them to the intelligent brain Xiao Wu as targets. After that, Liang Yue did not pay attention to the situation on the Western Front, and turned his attention to the Eastern Japanese invasion. Chapter 604. I was fooled again. Let me take a look regarding the Japs on Sakhalin Island. Not bad, they were completely wiped out before they even landed, and the ships they were on were sunk. Those broken ships are too dirty. It's a bit detrimental to the local marine ecology. The part that landed in the northeast is still just probing for now. A large number of Japs are gathered on the Korean side of the border. China hasn't even reacted. Zhang Ziaoshui is good at governing the army. He's no longer in the northeast? That shouldn't be the case at a time like this. Shandong and Shanghai are doing well, at least they know to send troops to confront them, but the numbers are a bit lacking in terms of equipment. Although my armory has been supplying them over the years, it's only barely equipped a portion of the army. They're still reluctant to invest. However, Old Jiang's main focus seems to be on the civil war. He's currently on his way to Xi'an. Zhang Ziaoshui is with him too. Swish. Just as Liang Yue was overlooking the entire situation in China, subconsciously touching his chin, and talking to himself, a bright yellow robe, emitting a faint light, suddenly swayed in the air, as if it had a spirit, and in the blink of an eye, it wrapped around him 5 or 6 times very neatly, and the other end of this rope was being held in the hands of Wonder Woman, Diana. At this moment, she was seriously half squatting in a bow stance, staring at him intently, her hands tightly gripping the lasso, looking ready for battle. Her originally exquisite goddess face now carried a full sense of heroic spirit. You're awake, looking at Diana in front of him. Liang Yue didn't seem surprised. He looked back at her with a light smile, and then turned his gaze back to the sandbox in front of him. As for the rope lassoed around him, he didn't care. The lasso of truth. It is said that this thing is unbreakable. In the comics, it seems that even Superman cannot break free from it. The most exaggerated time, this Wonder Woman once used this thing to surround a detonated nuclear bomb tightly, and relying on the tenacity of this lasso, she directly withstood a nuclear explosion. And people who are lassoed by this thing are said to only be able to tell the truth. So in most cases, it is used as an interrogation tool. However, according to Liang Yue's understanding, when Diana fought her half-brother, the god of war Ares, this lasso had backfired, directly dragging Wonder Woman into the beautiful illusion created by Ares. According to the setting of the plot, this lasso of truth is also Diana's weakness. Once she is lassoed herself, she will become weak and lose her divine power. Liang Yue, on the other hand, didn't care about this lasso at all. and didn't intend to conflict with her because he has always been clear conscience about what he has done. His original intention is the same, without the slightest doubt, and even in the situation where he had to take action, this guy was confident that he had enough ability to suppress this Wonder Woman. Answer me, Liang Yue. Why did you start this war? Faced with Liang Yue's greeting, Diana seemed a little tangled at this time, but soon the woman began to become firm, and then questioned him with a serious face. Looks like you've been fooled by someone again. Liang Yue heard the words, and immediately looked at her with some meaningful eyes. Answer me. Diana was stunned when she heard the words, and then continued to question. Seeing this, Liang Yue directly tugged the lasso of truth lightly, and Diana on the opposite side couldn't help but fly over, and then landed gently beside him, subconsciously taking half a step back. She calmed down after seeing that Liang Yue didn't intend to attack. Look at this sandbox. It is a cross-era technological product that can cover most of the Earth in some way, and then present it here in a virtual image. As he said, Liang Yue reached out and began to introduce to the other party the geographical area divisions on the sandbox in front of him. Here is our old territory of China, that is, the territorial range before I took action. Here is the new territory I took from Tsarist Russia. This is the European region. The traditional meaning of Europe refers to this piece, but now, they have occupied most of the land in the world through military warfare and enslaved the local people. Speaking of this, Liang Yue suddenly paused, and then looked at Diana with a strange expression and continued, by the way, what did you just ask me? Why did you start this war? Okay, just over an hour ago, 3 armies of over 1 million soldiers were launching an attack on my current territory from the east and west directions, and then I was forced to counterattack. You should be very clear about this, right? But according to the coalition statement to me, you illegally occupied this northern land. Illegal occupation? Then you should have read the history between China and Tsarist Russia, right? I remember, I gave you some information when we met last time. They said that they do not recognize the land you currently occupy. In addition, you also went to some of their countries, causing a lot of casualties. Then did those bastards tell you how much loss they caused in China, and what despicable means they used to extract benefits from my country? Speaking, Liang Yue's gaze finally moved away from the sandbox at this time, and his eyes met Diana as he remembered that when he injected information into this goddess's mind last time, he also injected some content about modern Chinese history. According to the saying, she shouldn't be completely ignorant. Sure enough, after looking at Liang Yue for a few seconds, Wonder Woman was obviously a little bit back to her senses, and then frowned slightly, and fell into contemplation. Liang Yue looked at her and continued, their so-called casualties. Let me put it this way, every time they took the initiative to provoke first, leading their troops into the interior of Chinese territory before I started to counterattack. As for whether they recognize China's ownership of this land, it doesn't matter. When the time comes, we just have to fight until they admit it. After speaking, Liang Yue turned his sleeves over again, took out the 2 land transfer agreements he had signed with the old Tsar before, and handed them to Diana. See, as the parties involved in the land, Tsarist Russia and I have already formally signed an agreement, and the legitimacy is here. There is no need for recognition from those external countries at all. Their purpose is just to contain us. Those people have committed too many crimes in our country, so they are very afraid that we will revive again. Is that so? Looking at the 2 agreements in her hand, and then looking at Liang Yue, who was staring at her with his eyes unblinking, Diana subconsciously chose to believe at this time with a flick of her wrist. The lasso of truth that was originally wrapped around him suddenly slackened, and then Diana rolled it into a bundle and hung it back on her waist. It's just that the goddess didn't seem very happy at this time, and her expression was a bit confused and perplexed. Looks like these 10 years of life haven't made you adapt to this world. I listened to your suggestion, and spent most of my time in the library, reading a lot of books about history, and I also understand a lot of principles. Then you should try to read some philosophy and economics again. You don't need to go too deep, but at least you should establish your own cognitive system. Speaking, Liang Yue stretched out a hand, pressed it on the back of Diana's head under her gaze, and then slowly leaned over. Slowly, the 2 foreheads touched together, and golden brilliance shone, and a stream of information was successfully injected again. During the process, the goddess did not dodge, and her watery eyes just looked at him like this. After a few breaths, Liang Yue couldn't help it, and directly kissed her. Chapter 605. My lord, times have changed. They say you are brutal, cold-blooded, wantonly killing innocent soldiers and civilians, wreaking havoc everywhere in their country in times of war. Any means are justifiable as long as victory can be achieved. Mercy towards the enemy is cruelty towards oneself. I'm merely applying the same methods they once used back onto them. HMPH. They can't handle that, but they did have several cities destroyed when they attempted to dismember and divide Chinese territory. They should have understood that our identities had become those of enemies. The loss of a few cities is indeed significant for them, but I actually have the ability to directly erase their country from the face of the earth. If I were to act according to my past self, I would definitely have done so. Do you ever feel remorse for the innocent souls who perished in those cities? No, in my eyes, they are one with their country. Since they enjoyed the wealth and convenience plundered from all over the world by their country's army and merchants, then they should bear the corresponding risks. Before, their army illegally invaded Chinese territory, so they should pay the price for it. I still feel it's a bit too cruel. Frankly speaking, it is a bit, but in reality, cruelty is a necessary quality for a nation to stand tall in this world. A nation that only preaches mercy will sooner or later become someone else's slave. If a country is always indecisive and hesitant, it will eventually perish. You should have seen many examples of this in history books. Right, I have seen many, which is what I have always been unable to understand. We are all human beings, so why are they so cruel to their own kind? Because some people have become inflated, believing themselves to be chosen ones, and thus develop a sense of superiority. When they see something different from themselves, they will belittle and despise it. They even try to divide and categorize races based on skin color. In the end, it's still a matter of strength. And what about you? Why do you turn a blind eye to the suffering of your own country and people? Isn't China currently suffering from foreign invasion, and even civil war? Did they tell you that too? Partly, but I also have doubts about it. Regarding this question, it's a bit of a long story. It probably has to start from the previous ruling regime. Within China, night, the bright moon is like jade. The shore of what used to be Lake Baikal, now renamed Zhuangwu Lake by Liang Yue, on a reef being lapped by waves. Liang Yue and Diana are sitting together, gazing at the moonlit lake, constantly exchanging words. In the end, the two of them didn't seem to reach an agreement on their views of the world and humanity. During the process, there were many disagreements. Therefore, after only spending 3 days with him in Zhenji City, Diana bid farewell and asked someone to send her to a corner of the Nordic region. After returning, Liang Yue once again entered secluded cultivation. The development of events, as expected, did not exceed his expectations. Within a short hour, after successively losing more than 2 million troops, as well as many military facilities, important military towns, and even industrial cities, within the territory of Tsarist Russia, whether it was the northern regime at this time, or the Allied powers gathered around the little Tsar, uncontrollably, they once again fell into a state of speechlessness, unable to recover from this huge loss and shock for a long time. The fear in their hearts began to make them act erratically. They were deeply afraid that Liang Yue, in a moment of displeasure, would, like last time, directly run to their respective countries and casually flatten a few more cities. You must know that they are not what they used to be. The great powers, still under the shadow of the economic crisis, cannot withstand too much of a blow now. The destruction of the frontline combat troops is foreseeably going to cost them a huge price. If at this time, a few more important cities are erased from the map, then what awaits them will be extremely cruel consequences. They prepared to use various means to win over, bribe, and ingratiate themselves with the Chinese government, in order to ease the contradictions brought about by this war. That's right, after the last lesson, they no longer dared to indirectly influence the Flowing Cloud sect, and Liang Yue's decisions, through pressure on the Chinese government, because facts have proven that this method is useless. And there is no subordinate or management relationship between the two. Even if, in the beginning, officials did convey messages to the Flowing Cloud sect under the pressure of various countries, how could this affect Liang Yue? With his current strength, paying attention to you is giving you face. Not paying attention to you is perfectly normal based on the current nature of the Chinese authorities. How could they possibly gain any advantage from him? So, in desperation, the great powers now had to settle for the next best thing. In order to prevent Liang Yue from carrying out those unwarranted retaliations against them, they directly made many promises to the current Chinese government. Among them, in addition to promising to enhance China's international status and provide loans, it even included conditions such as the transfer of some industrial technology and the gifting of second-hand warships. There was no other way. Survival was at stake, and no carelessness was allowed. What was laughable was that Liang Yue, as the person involved, had no intention of retaliating against those Allied powers at this time. After all, it was already 1936, and history had entered the current stage. and World War II was about to break out. The Fora's side really needed a group of restraining forces when old Jiang contacted Liang Yue through a communication device reserved in the academy, and conveyed the intentions and thoughts of those countries. He naturally had no reason to refuse, but just instructed the other party to haggle with the other party a bit more, and not to be polite with those great powers in comparison. The situation faced by the Japanese at this time was a bit difficult to handle. After all, we originally agreed to attack and crusade together, but the troops on my eastern front had just landed, and you on the western side had already been completely wiped out. This seems a bit different from our original plan. Could it be that those Europeans are really so vulnerable? Apart from conventional combat forces, are there no exceptional elite groups that can be brought out? In fact, they did have them. Liang Yue had discovered many groups wearing strange costumes on the frontline battlefield of the panoramic sand table. Among them, the most numerous were some Vatican personnel holding crosses, and armored knights. In addition, there were also quite a few unknown people with canes and gray robes, as well as tall, bare-chested muscle men covered in various war patterns. Unfortunately, this group of people was almost wiped out by the intelligent brain Xiao Wu at the first moment of the war. Even if there were a very few seniors among them with profound skills in magic cultivation, they still could not play any role in this kind of near-modern battlefield with the millions of people under the coverage of various electromagnetic cannons, fragmentation shells, magnetic storm mines, and incendiary bombs. In the end, one by one fell, all buried under the dazzling firepower. My lord, times have changed. Chapter 606 in Chapter X27, SO Domineering. Just like that, the European coalition, along with their awakened ones, was gone in a short day. Their attitude underwent a complete 180-degree reversal, and now they were busy making compromises and seeking peace with the Huaxia government. Only on the eastern front were the island nations starting to feel trapped, unsure of what to do. They wanted to attack, but they feared that Liang Yue might suddenly take action against them. They wanted to retreat, but their million-strong army had just landed. To retreat silently like this, not to mention the strange criticisms they would face internationally, even their own domestic public opinion would be unacceptable. They simply couldn't explain this kind of thing to their citizens at this time. Japan was also affected by the American economic crisis and the Great Depression. Domestic conflicts were acute, and they urgently needed an outlet to shift their own conflicts and attention, and to consume excess inventory. However, reality plunged them into a dilemma. Unable to advance or retreat, they were stuck there. It wasn't until 3 days later, when a sudden gunshot and the assassination of a high-ranking general who had come to inspect the front lines occurred, that the situation began to change. Subsequently, gunshots began to rain down. At first, they were scattered and sparse, but then they gradually increased until they became extremely dense, with artillery fire filling the sky. Seeing this situation, the commanders on both sides knew that the situation was starting to spiral out of control. Whether to fight or not was no longer up to them. At least in the current situation, they couldn't allow their troops to suffer losses in vain. As a result, the war between Huaxia and Japan officially began. Initially, both sides may have had some reservations. The Huaxia side was restrained by their superiors and dared not go all out, while the Japanese military leaders were afraid that their million-strong force would suddenly disappear, so they didn't exert their full strength. But as the fighting continued, the situation on the battlefield was no longer up to them. Under the catalysis of various complex factors, both sides slowly became bloodthirsty. Half a month later, facing the overwhelming army, many parts of Shandong, the entire Shanghai and its surrounding areas had fallen. Using these as bases, the Japanese army began to divide its forces and advance in multiple directions towards the north and south. This situation suddenly took a turn for the worse. Although preparations had been made in various places along the way for the Japanese invasion, and many towns and strategic locations were guarded by military forces. However, whether in terms of troop training or overall equipment levels, the Huaxia army at this time was much worse than the Japanese army. After only another month, the entire Shandong province fell, and Hebei, Henan, Jiangsu and other places had also lost half of their territory. Even the former Huaxia capital, Beiping City, had been easily occupied by the Japanese army at this point. Both Japan and Nanjing understood that what Liang Yue had said before was indeed the truth. He said he wouldn't care, and he didn't. Thus, under the urging of some ambition and small sparks, the Japanese army, which had been stationed on the Korean border, also began to invade Huaxia territory in large numbers. For a time, the Northeast, North China, and Central China were all in urgent need of assistance, and the flames of war began to spread throughout the eastern region. Faced with this grim situation, People from all walks of life couldn't sit still and shouted loudly, urging the Nanjing government to unite all domestic forces and resolutely resist the Japanese devil's invasion. They could no longer focus solely on attacking dissidents and weakening the country's strength. Unfortunately, old Jiang didn't see it that way. From beginning to end, he believed that it was common sense to pacify the interior before resisting foreign aggression. In his eyes, the threat posed by another domestic force to him far outweighed the Japanese's current acts of aggression. Old Jiang, who had worked with that force before, had already witnessed its terrifying grassroots organizational and mobilization capabilities. If he couldn't guarantee continuous suppression until it was completely crushed, then his rule would face an unprecedented crisis in the future. It was with this kind of thinking and weighing that old Jiang was still stubbornly sticking to his own way, turning a blind eye to the Japanese army's offensive and passively resisting. He was still desperately encircling and suppressing the other domestic force. Even though they had expressed their willingness to join hands in resisting Japan, he resolutely refused to compromise. Thus, in the winter of 1936, location, Xi'an, it had just snowed, and the weather was very cold. Old Jiang was surrounded by troops led by 2 military generals in his residence as soon as the news came out. There was an uproar at home and abroad then. Not long after, with the efforts and mediation of people from all walks of life, old Jiang finally issued a declaration to stop the civil war and unite in resisting Japan. Since then, Huaxia finally reached a unified opinion internally and began to unite against foreign enemies. During the process, Liang Yue had been in seclusion in Zhenbi City. In particular, their physical qualities, after years of body refinement and cultivation, as well as Liang Yue's occasional assistance, had also reached the peak of the Haoshan realm. Compared to when Liang Yue and the others had just arrived in this world, Jixiang Sensei, Siko Senpai and others were much stronger now. Their physical qualities, like their ki refining cultivation, had reached a bottleneck, and they could only continue to become stronger after breaking through the shackles and advancing to the Xianshan realm. As for the others, especially Nana, Alwyn, Xia Azio, Yang Buhu and others' direct disciples, were mostly the same in recent years, under their careful cultivation and the irrigation of various spiritual medicines. Their strength had reached the peak of the Haoshan realm. Many of the inner and outer disciples had also made great progress. Those who were approved to leave the mountain gate this time for training all had at least the strength of the middle stage of the Haoshan realm, and those responsible for leading the team were directly Xianshan masters such as Narikao, Siko Senpai, Xia Azio, and Hinada. Only Alwyn stayed behind to be responsible for guarding the sect. It was a little thin, so Liang Yue came back to sit in the sect in case of sneak attacks by villains. In fact, in recent years, not only had the strength of his disciples advanced rapidly, but Liang Yue himself had also done the same since the previous creation of fortune introductory key gathering method was completed. Liang Yue's cultivation speed had entered another level as long as the method was used. The lotus-shaped key gathering method constructed with him as the center would quietly penetrate the barriers and obstacles around him. It continuously absorbed energy and matter from all directions, different spaces, and different dimensions, for transformation and induction for his cultivation. It can be said that, with this key gathering method, Liang Yue, at least in the near future, no longer had to worry about insufficient cultivation resources because, in terms of his current cultivation efficiency, he simply didn't need that much energy. To give an inappropriate example, Liang Yue at this time was like a small cultivator who had just entered the path of immortal cultivation, and had not even been able to condense the golden core, but was placed in the cultivation environment of the true immortal realm. In this case, even if his own key refining technique was not very efficient, the speed of cultivation and the speed of strength advancement must not be slow. Therefore, unknowingly, Liang Yue had now advanced his cultivation to the peak of the foundation establishment stage. It was so overbearing. If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 607 Affirmation from Parents. It's worth mentioning that, during the past few years of closed-door cultivation, the flower that once bloomed from the lightning firewood sapling in Liang Yue's danshan has also fully opened after the layers of petals unfolded. What appeared on top was surprisingly a lightning pearl. It can be seen as a kind of transformed lightning technique. The reason it's called a transformed technique is because this lightning pearl, and even the flowering and fruiting of the lightning firewood sapling, all stem from the emergence of some kind of balancing mechanism. As Liang Yue's cultivation became more refined, and the energy he absorbed through the introductory key absorption method of the heavenly creation became increasingly profound. The small tree in his danchan also grew continuously along with it. The closer its form was to maturity, the more perfect its own composition became. However, due to the tribulation, Liang Yue boldly absorbed a lot of tribulation power through the lightning fire wood intent, breaking the balance between the lightning and fire forces within it. Therefore, as the sapling's own form continued to improve, it naturally discharged the excess lightning power in this form. Fortunately, the lightning power condensed in the form of a lightning pearl has a very stable structure. If it is not artificially stimulated, it can be preserved for a long time. Although this was not the original intention of the lightning firewood sapling, it did unexpectedly provide Liang Yue with a means of condensing lightning power. Even more valuable is that the form of this lightning pearl was unconsciously constructed by the sapling based on its instincts, without too much modification, and it inherently carries many original symbols of the lightning attribute. This undoubtedly provides Liang Yue with a lot of valuable material and ideas for future research into lightning power. Therefore, that lightning pearl, which has almost become a solid entity, has now been carefully placed by him in the storage space for subsequent research and development. After his cultivation reached the great perfection of the foundation establishment stage, Liang Yue easily felt a strange aura in his danchan, and as his cultivation realm was further consolidated, and various high-level energies were continuously integrated, the lightning firewood sapling in his danchan had already unknowingly completely transformed into a solid state. Moreover, possibly because the energy substances absorbed into Liang Yue's body contained relatively abundant spatial power at this time, his entire danchan, or rather, the surrounding area centered on the sapling, seemed to have undergone some kind of spatial change. A gray, dim light was surrounding the entire sapling. This invisibly made Liang Yue's danchan seem to transform into an independent space. Fortunately, so far, Liang Yue has not detected any crises or hidden dangers in this change. In his limited knowledge and understanding, his lightning firewood sapling seems to be accumulating power in great strides towards a more profound realm. It's just that it's temporarily restricted there due to Liang Yue's own realm problem. He felt that the current state of the sapling was somewhat similar to the lotus flower constructed when running the introductory key absorption method of heavenly creation. With the introduction of spatial power, its form is also transforming towards a more complete, multi-layered, and even cross-dimensional direction. However, compared to the orthodox top-level divine power of Taoism, the lightning firewood sapling in Liang Yue's danchan is still very immature. It is still far from being able to penetrate space. Fortunately, this trend itself is precious enough. The more complete the form of the sapling, the more powerful the tree heart golden core that will be condensed next will be. This is the most important thing for Liang Yue at this stage. In fact, after his cultivation reached the great perfection of the foundation establishment stage, the danchan sapling, which had already taken the lead and transformed into a solid body, also had a tendency to condense the tree heart and quickly move towards the next step one after another. Tangible, natural vein structures, as if prepared in advance, connected various corners inside the tree body, and converged and unified at the central point of the sapling's trunk. Now, the only thing lacking for Liang Yue to truly condense the golden core and advance to the next realm is an opportunity to be precise. All the hardware conditions have been prepared. All Liang Yue needs to do now is to check for omissions and adjust his state. In addition, it is obviously a very important step to inquire about his current situation from professionals. But before officially attacking the bottleneck, this guy first sent a message to his mother, who had been in seclusion in the stronghold world, through the villager platform, hoping to get some guidance from his elders. What's the situation inside your danchan now? After a few seconds, his mother sent him feedback. It's roughly like this. Afterwards, Liang Yue explained his thoughts, ideas, and the choice and practice of his cultivation techniques during this period of time. He explained everything in detail, even some doubts, difficulties, situations, and the accidental addition of the first transformation of the heavenly dipper during this process, all in one go. Then, in the next moment, a bright blue spatial channel appeared in front of Liang Yue. The opposite side of the channel was connected to an unfamiliar mountain peak in the stronghold world. Clouds gathered in the sky, with myriad phenomena, and below were 10,000 zang high cliffs and overlapping mountains. His mother was sitting on a platform on the top of the mountain. Behind her was a brightly lit cave, and beside her was an old peach tree, laden with fruit. Upon closer inspection, this peach tree was actually the spirit-grade flat peach tree that Liang Yue had obtained from Kunlun Valley in the world of heaven. Sword and dragon saber. Under the peach tree, there was a stone table, with all kinds of tea, snacks, melons, and fruits. More importantly, the tea seemed to be the rain mist spirit tea that he had personally planted before, and the various snacks were also things that Jinxiang and Hinata had cooked up in their spare time. Obviously, although it had been a while since they had seen each other, his mother was living a very good life here. She was not purely unaware of what was happening outside, and occasionally went to the village for a walk, and then took some snacks along the way. It's just that Liang Yue and others didn't notice it after the door opened. His mother put down the teacup in her hand, and her big eyes looked at him like this. Seeing this, Liang Yue immediately stretched out his arms, and then waited expectantly for her comments. After a while, the mother on the opposite side nodded, with a bit of relief on her face, and said, "Your idea is good. The means of constructing and strengthening spiritual power based on the method of innate imagery, and then using innate imagery to imitate the crystallization talent of tree demons, has some meaning of following the laws of nature. However, the most critical thing is the addition of the heavenly creation method, which provides enough nourishment for your innate imagery. Now it seems that the foundation you have accumulated it is enough to leave the vast majority of people behind, and can be compared with the most top-notch talents in this world. Actually, in the beginning, I was using the purple lotus drawn out by Martial Dao True Key as an intermediary to absorb cosmic energy as nourishment. Didn't I have something better later?" Speaking of this, Liang Yue suddenly paused, thought for a while, and continued, "By the way, Mom, this little tree in my danchin can also evaporate a kind of energy similar to the principle of water vapor, and now it has accumulated into a pool at the roots of the tree. Later, with the addition of the heavenly dip or great divine power, it contains amazing vitality. What do you think of this thing? Not bad. Continue to follow your ideas. You can now safely condense the golden core. Since you have made preparations, don't hesitate." Is that all? Don't need to check for omissions again. The 36 transformations of the heavenly dipper is originally a technique that only true immortals are qualified to practice. Being able to initially cultivate the introductory key absorption method of the first transformation at this stage can be considered your good fortune. In addition, there is the sapling containing the power of heavenly tribulation as a filtering method, unless you want to take another path, otherwise such accumulation is enough. I understand. Chapter 608 Condensing the Golden Elixir. 3 days later, a corner of Mount Taipei, the top of an inconspicuous hill with sparse vegetation and scattered rocks. Liang Yue was sitting cross-legged on a half-side rock, staring blankly at the shallow snow line not far in front of him. The whistling mountain wind carried a few snowflakes, blowing his hair and wrinkling his clothes, but it couldn't move him a bit. After a long time, when Liang Yue's spirit had completely calmed down, and his body began to feel slightly cold with the wind, suddenly, his eyelids flicked open and his originally indifferent and dull eyes, 2 dazzling purple lights burst out instantly as more and more energy substances gathered at the center point. An invisible rotational force began to generate inside the tree. It was not a whirlwind-like shape, but a more complex circle, layer upon layer, like a transparent ring structure. One circle after another, it looked like a complex armillary sphere, dense and seemingly chaotic, yet following a simple structure and sense of balance. All the trajectories and norms of movement were traceable. It swirled countless dazzling spiritual powers and thunder fire powers, constantly converging towards the center of this structure. Half an hour later, when all the spiritual energy substances in the thunder firewood small tree in the danshin were completely extracted and condensed to one point, when the entire tree of the solid small tree was only left with a blurred light and shadow, a strange opportunity appeared. Everything seemed to be arranged, and the rings of invisible celestial structures dissipated on their own. At the center of the small tree's light and shadow, a golden core about the size of a soybean, exceptionally solid, and flashing with glazed purple, appeared there. The whole process was unexpectedly smooth. Strands of bright blue and bright red thunder fire power were densely engraved on the purple golden core in the form of mysterious and ancient Dao patterns. At a glance, it unconsciously gave rise to a sense of grandeur and nobility. Harmony, nature, just right, without the slightest hint of being overshadowed. Crack, crack, crack. At this moment, a crisp cracking sound suddenly came without warning. Listening carefully, the source of the sound was actually the golden core itself within Liang Yue's danshin. At this moment, on his golden core, which had just condensed, there were already obvious cracks, and in the blink of an eye, it began to become dense. In just a few breaths, the golden core, which originally looked exceptionally noble and had red and blue Dao symbols engraved on its surface, was like a piece of dry land, full of cracks and hardened scars everywhere. Seeing this, Liang Yue was shocked. His golden core, which he had painstakingly constructed, showed signs of collapse in the blink of an eye. Could it be that there are some places where I haven't considered everything? That's not right. My mom said there was no problem. Could it be because the purity level of the spiritual energy is too high? Thinking of this, Liang Yue couldn't help but frown slightly, trying to maintain the integrity of the golden core as his thoughts turned. His divine sense subconsciously swept across the entire Danshan, and then he noticed a small pool of water that was quietly gathering there below the light and shadow of his small tree. Is it missing this? Because of the change in energy intensity, the thunder, fire, and wood three attribute energies have become too pure. And they condense too quickly. So, is there a lack of necessary lubricant? Logically speaking, the energy in my pool should be a life essence in the form of water vapor, which originally came from the transformation of the small tree. It seems that now, it is indeed time to return to its origin. Thinking of this, Liang Yue no longer hesitated. With a thought, he mobilized the vibrant energy body in the pool, which was glowing with colorful brilliance, and directly surrounded his dry golden core. In the next moment, pieces of water vapor energy, like dark clouds and dew that quickly gathered in the sky above the long drought land, began to spread towards the hardened earth in just a blink of an eye. The golden core, which was about to collapse, was stopped from continuing to deteriorate in Liang Yue's observation. His life energy was indeed powerful. Although it was not very useful for the power of thunder and fire, it could greatly enhance the wood attribute spiritual energy that served as the main pillar, making it more vibrant and possessing the tenacious viscosity of plants and life species. In less than a quarter of an hour, those water vapor energies completely merged into the golden core, or rather, merged into his golden core system in another form. After this reconciliation, Liang Yue's thunder fire wood golden core was completely stabilized. The soybean-sized golden core once again turned over with a full and lustrous glazed color, but around this golden core, there was an extra layer of misty aura. Like the Earth's atmosphere, that was a large area of life force composed of water vapor energy, while constantly nourishing the golden core. It also participated in the operating system of his golden core in the form of rain, evaporation, and atmospheric circulation. Of course, this was not all of the water vapor energy in Liang Yue's body. Below the light and shadow of the thunder firewood small tree, there was still a pool of spring water. It was just that the scale had shrunk by more than half compared to before. At this time, Liang Yue had gradually understood his golden core was indeed invaluable, and it was the crystallization of his years of cultivation. But this did not mean that the water vapor energy in the Danshan and the thunder firewood small tree were not important, especially the small tree itself. He really shouldn't have regarded this thing as a one-time consumable like Liang Yue's previous practice of directly sucking up all the energy substances from the small tree. It was really unwise. The solidified thunder firewood small tree was actually the connection between his golden core and the water vapor energy below. While the small pool was nourishing the small tree, it was also nurturing the small tree's tree heart. This was originally a complete cycle, a concrete deduction of the Tao of nature, but because of Liang Yue's previous negligence and eagerness for quick success, he destroyed this stable structure all at once. Not only did it violate the Tao of nature, but it also violated his original intention. It really shouldn't be. Fortunately, there is still time to remedy it now. The light and shadow of this Danshan small tree is still there. Thinking of this, Liang Yue relaxed his control over the golden core and transported a part of the spiritual energy through the original veins to all parts of the small tree outside. A complex transparent lotus flower also appeared, and a large amount of heaven and earth energy began to converge from all directions, different spaces, and different dimensions. Rumble rumble. Also at this moment, a dull thunder sounded suddenly in the originally cloudy sky. Liang Yue felt a palpitation in his heart and quickly looked up. In the blink of an eye, the snow cloud, which was originally a normal winter cloud, began to surge violently. The clouds gathered rapidly, and the sky was constantly darkening at a speed visible to the naked eye. Large swaths of lightning flashed in the thick black clouds. A rotating thunder tribulation cloud eye was constantly drawing thunder power from the surrounding area with Liang Yue as the center. Liang Yue's heavenly tribulation was coming. Chapter 609 The Wrathful Catastrophe. Rumble, rumble. Just like the low roar of a wild beast before a hunt, the thick tribulation clouds above the sky were almost pressing down on the hill where Liang Yue was, with dull thunder constantly rumbling and echoing. Flashes of lightning were connected in sheets, constantly converging towards the eye of the tribulation cloud. In a few breaths, a large amount of heavenly thunder power had accumulated in the constantly rotating eye of the thunder above Liang Yue's head, the dazzling light emitting a restless sound non-stop. However, Liang Yue at this time was completely unmoved. Facing the thunder tribulation above his head, he still sat there steadily cross-legged. Subsequently, his entire figure slowly rose from the ground for nearly 100 meters, eventually stopping in mid-air. The distance to the heavenly tribulation thunder eye in the cloud layer seemed to be within reach. Around his body, A transparent lotus flower silently formed an outer covering, protecting Liang Yue within. It marked that Liang Yue's mastery of this key absorption method had taken another step forward. It was just that he had not yet realized how it was specifically different from before. The reason for this was probably because this lotus flower originally had a very high efficiency in absorbing external energy, and now that it had gone a step further, the efficiency of attracting and absorbing energy substances from various different spaces and dimensions was still very high. It didn't seem to have changed much. Perhaps its effect is not reflected in this aspect. Liang Yue, who was working hard to absorb energy from all directions to replenish the small tree in his danshan, was even thinking leisurely about this even when facing the thunder turbulation above his head. Crack. Perhaps angered that someone below dared to be distracted and temporarily cultivate when facing the thunder turbulation. In the next moment, a bright blue heavenly tribulation, as thick as a bowl, struck down with lightning speed. The speed was so fast that it seemed to cross space, accompanied by the sound of exploding thunder. It struck Liang Yue's body in the blink of an eye. However, at this moment, a strange scene occurred. It was seen that just as that heavenly thunder was about to strike Liang Yue's body, the transparent lotus flower covering his body suddenly showed incredible power under the lightning. The lotus flower, which was originally layers of thin, water-like ripples, actually absorbed the thunder turbulation with extreme efficiency the moment it came into contact with the heavenly thunder. The originally transparent lotus flower was also dyed into a bright blue color by the lightning, and violent electric arcs flew up and down in the entire flower shape. But after only a few breaths, it was smoothed out and incorporated into the interior of the lotus shape. Then, Liang Yue mixed it with other energy substances and quietly absorbed it into his body. So that's how it is. Although the efficiency doesn't seem to have improved, the strength itself is already incomparable. Even thunder turbulation cannot break through this mere lotus of ki absorption. This is only the introductory mental method of the heavenly astral dharma, wielding creation, harmonizing all things, profound investigation of creation, using death to create life, using nothing to create something. Even thunder turbulation is within the scope of harmonization and incorporation. All things must follow the flow and occurrence of this system. It truly deserves to be a great divine power technique. This is a suppression derived from Taoism and rules amazing. As a result, Liang Yue's turbulation went very smoothly. Successive thunderbolts failed to break through the lotus-shaped dharma outside his body, but instead, in the blink of an eye, they were tamed into docile donkeys, and turned into precious absorbable energy, filling Liang Yue's danshan. The smoothness of the process far exceeded his expectations. Under the leisurely mood, a trace of boredom and tedium suddenly arose in someone's heart. Looking up at the eye of the heavenly tribulation above, which was still diligently rotating and striving to absorb the power of thunder from all directions. In the next moment, Liang Yue narrowed his eyes slightly, and with a thought, his entire person instantly rushed into the eye of the thunder. Crack. Boom. Donga. Paika. For a time, the entire turbulation cloud seemed to become extremely angry because of his offense and unauthorized intrusion. Patches of lightning arcs began to rapidly converge from all directions, rushing towards Liang Yue, who was in the center of the eye of the thunder. All kinds of roars and thunderous sounds resounded through the sky and earth, and the violent pressure spread wantonly, enveloping the entire Qinchuan, and it seemed that half of China could feel the meaning of its pressure. Finally, this violent thunder light shone for more than an hour before slowly easing down. After that, the thick turbulation clouds began to dissipate, and disappeared into nothing in just a few breaths, leaving only a clear and refreshing blue sky. The originally gloomy snow clouds had long since disappeared without a trace. Cough, 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 cough. At this time, looking at Liang Yue, this guy actually fell from the sky hundreds of meters in the air, rolling and falling to the ground, smashing the soil and rocks, and splashing debris in all directions. His whole body was tattered and had long become charred. Even the hair, which was originally as strong as aerospace metal, had begun to curl under the power of the heavenly tribulation. One after another, violent electric arcs would jump out from somewhere on his body from time to time, causing this fellow to twitch and emit green smoke. Swish. In the next moment, a slender figure quickly came to the front, squatted down with a concerned look, and looked at Liang Yue. At this time this person was none other than Elf Princess Arwen. Although she did not show up when Liang Yue was crossing the tribulation before, she had been guarding silently in a place a few kilometers away, paying close attention to him during this period. She even used the convenience of a small martial doppelganger to record the entire process of his tribulation. Liang Yue, are you okay? Don't worry. Cough. This time, I was just a little careless. The power of the thunder turbulation I absorbed, cough, was a little too much. Cough. My body is also a little damaged it seems. Cough, cough. I have to rest for a few months. Fortunately, the harvest this time is also great, enough to cough. This little loss. Let's talk about this later. I'll take you back to the mountain gate to heal. A moment later, back in that familiar lakeside thatched cottage, Liang Yue, with Arwen's support, somewhat difficultly took a posture of 5 hearts facing the sky, calming his mind and ki. Enduring the electric arcs that were constantly rioting on his body, he began to recuperate attentively. About a quarter of an hour later, a lotus flower that seemed to be constructed of pure fluid appeared again around his body, and the violent electric arcs also began to be incorporated into it, becoming docile at this time. Arwen's tense little face gradually eased, and then she quietly exited the room. Chapter 610 Yamada no Orochi, 2. Liang Yue's previous actions were indeed very dangerous. Regardless of everything, he directly plunged into the eye of the tribulation cloud, and the heavenly tribulation, representing the will of heaven and earth, seemed to be instantly angered, no longer adhering to any rules. A large amount of heavenly thunder power began to converge from all directions. It was as if it were endless and without end. His bombardment and attacks never stopped for a moment. Only after all the thunder tribulation power in the entire tribulation cloud, spanning dozens of kilometers, was exhausted, did it dissipate unwillingly on its own. During the process, even the ki absorbing lotus flower outside Liang Yue's body was forced to collapse because it was overloaded and reached its limit. The thunder tribulation power in his body also became difficult to control due to the excessive influx. Fortunately, the ki absorbing lotus flower was not Liang Yue's only means. The innate thunder firewood phenomenon also had a considerable restraining effect on this kind of heavenly thunder. After successfully advancing to the golden core realm, the current innate phenomenon has also ushered in a great leap forward in level. Therefore, with the assistance and maintenance of this thunder firewood phenomenon, Liang Yue tried his best to absorb the power of the heavenly tribulation while recondensing the ki absorbing lotus flower. When the thunder power in the tribulation cloud was about to disappear, Liang Yue finally ushered in the real moment of harvest. Seizing the opportunity under his whimsical operation, a portion of the tribulation clouds in the most core area around the eye of the heavenly tribulation was absorbed into his body in one go. Now, this tribulation cloud has reformed and settled down in Liang Yue's danshin. At first, it was a little out of control, wandering around the gray dark light formed by spatial energy around the danshin tree. Later, under Liang Yue's conscious adjustment, this part of the tribulation cloud directly came to the top of the danshin tree, surging and turbulent, containing thunder light. It would occasionally drop a thunder force to strike the small tree and the golden core. Fortunately, compared with a real heavenly tribulation, its power is not exaggerated. In addition, the energy of the water pond below the small tree continuously nourishes it. Between this drinking and pecking, it instead formed a benign promotion mechanism, passively increasing the essence of the small tree and the golden core. Of course, Liang Yue would definitely not allow this tribulation cloud to exist in his body without being under his control at this time. He was trying to refine these mysterious things between heaven and earth, but it is estimated that he will not be able to do this for the time being. But even so, the existence of these tribulation clouds can still play a considerable role in promoting his cultivation. In addition, the thunder tribulation power of the golden core stage is naturally stronger than Liang Yue's previous foundation establishment stage. Therefore, integrating a part of the heavenly thunder into himself, removing the dross and preserving the essence, and replacing those with insufficient power is naturally also an important task. Other odds and ends, checking for omissions and filling in gaps, as well as adaptation problems after advancing to the golden core stage, were all adjusted by him during this period. Squeak a sound. Liang Yue pushed open the wooden door of the thatched hut, and what he saw was a lake sheltered by a bamboo forest, and Arwen, who was leisurely boating on the lake at this time. The elven princess was sitting peacefully in a small boat, wearing a hat, and holding a fishing rod in her hand in a decent manner. But this woman's attention was actually focused on the panoramic sand table in her hand. Beside her, 2 half-grown pandas were clinging to the edge of the boat, curiously looking into the lake from time to time. They made hum sounds. Another giant panda, which seemed to be an adult, was swimming in the water at this time, with a very agile figure. Between the ups and downs, it could even catch up with the agility of the in just a moment. He bit a big fish that was half a meter long and swam towards the boat. Seeing this, Liang Yue, who was in a good mood, also smiled. The next second, he stepped on the water and came to the boat. "What are you looking at, so fascinated?" It's Siko and the others. They seemed to have encountered some trouble, as if she had expected his arrival, Arwen said without raising her head at this time. Hearing this, Liang Yue followed the woman's words and turned his gaze to the panoramic sand table on the side. "I saw in the virtual model a mountain-like behemoth, was now raging between the forest and the snow. Its body was hundreds of meters high. 8 dragon-shaped giant heads roared ferociously. Their pupils were blood red, and they were constantly spewing a kind of miserable green mist similar to venom in all directions. 8 tails, like huge brooms, kept sweeping and hitting the surrounding hills and woodlands. For a time, earth and rocks flew, and mountains collapsed. Even in this case, one after another of lithe figures were still stubbornly fighting against it. Some of them held long swords, relying on their agile skills, leaping between the fierce beasts, and the golden swordlight in their hands kept slashing. Some used the convenience of modern firearms, carrying rocket launchers on their shoulders, and standing in the distance to carry out fixed-point strikes. Some were throwing handfuls of hidden weapons, which were attached with thunder and fire, and some simply gathered ki into waves, constantly firing extremely penetrating energy bullets at the 8-headed behemoth. Some simply transformed into a somewhat strange dragon eagle, soaring between the heavens and the earth, and from time to time spitting out a path of green dragon breath. Above the high sky, the wind and cloud surged, and paths of falling thunder seemed to be continuous, falling head-on, and the fierce blizzard swept with cold wind and hail, as if to freeze the entire earth. In addition, on some peripheral hills and treetops, there were also many onlookers, but at this moment, most of their energy was focused on another battlefield separated from this place by a mountain. There was also a group of people fighting in a melee, and all kinds of corpses were already lying on the ground. Yamada no Orochi, looking at the 8-headed beast that was constantly roaring among the mountains, Liang Yue suddenly became interested, and casually threw the giant panda that was clinging to his leg and climbing up into the cabin, and he himself stepped into it. It should be this thing. Before, I saw a group of Japanese people mysteriously bringing a sword to Changbei Mountain, as if they were preparing some kind of ceremony. Soon after, the people from the Dao League arrived, but they failed to stop them. This monster was summoned with that sword. According to Japanese legends, this should be Yamada no Orochi. Without a doubt, Arwen had obviously been watching here for a long time, and witnessed the whole process. Her tone was unhurried, and she seemed very calm. This guy is injured, and his strength is probably in the middle and late stages of foundation establishment. It's a little difficult for Siko and the others. I think it's okay. Before, in the dark dungeon, the 3 demon kings of hell difficulty were more powerful than this. That's just a copy after all, and the bosses inside have a number of routines. This Yamada no Orochi is not that simple. Do you want to take action? Let's take a look again. I always feel that the plans of those little devils should have a backhand. Chapter 611 I and Chapter X27, am tired, hurry up. About an hour later, the battle on another battlefield had ended, with the island nations awakened completely annihilated, blood and severed limbs littering the ground. Of course, the Huaxia side also suffered casualties, but in much smaller numbers. Among them were members of the Dao Alliance, as well as disciples from his own Flowing Cloud sect. After bandaging, applying medicine, and simply treating their injuries, the group supported each other, carrying the remains of their companions, and silently moved to a safe place. However, during this process, they were completely unaware that the scattered blood and the flow of blood on the chaotic battlefield behind them were somewhat abnormal at this time. The Yamada no Orochi, under the siege of the women, had been beaten and battered. Although they were not directly hit due to their agility, the Yamada no Orochi's poison spray was indeed very difficult to deal with. In addition to being highly poisonous, it also had powerful corrosive properties. Ordinary people would suffer a great reduction in combat power if they accidentally inhaled even a little. If it weren't for Shizuka's purification aura, which could increase their resistance to toxins and passively restore blood, and the fact that the women were carrying a massive amount of antidote potions and continuously protecting themselves with spiritual power and true ki, it would really not be easy to suppress such a well-known behemoth. However, even so, Siko, Hinata, and the others still did not have the ability to inflict a fatal blow on the Yamada no Orochi. From this, it can be seen that although the women are now all quite strong, enough to make them proud among their peers, they lack some powerful means to win with one blow, turn the tide, and inflict heavy damage on the enemy. It should be known that, also at the innate realm, Liang Yue once fought against the Yamada no Orochi ninjutsu used by Orochimaru in the Naruto world. Although the Yamada no Orochi ninjutsu at that time was not comparable to the real Yamada no Orochi now, the means displayed by Liang Yue at that time, namely the wood key rin constructed with a wood release, were also not fully exerted. If he had the chance, he could still use that wood key rin to subdue this Yamada no Orochi obediently. At this time, the offensive and moves displayed by the women, although sharp, obviously lacked this kind of awareness and idea. Where did little Kongo? Did it also go out with Shizuka and the others to train? After staring at the panoramic sand table for a long time, Liang Yue, who had been feeling like something was missing, suddenly reacted and asked. It seems that Shizuka left it outside the mountain to guard the place. There are also many Japanese troops there, and the Ma family and the Dao Alliance have also set up branches there. Oh look! It seems that something is being awakened over there. Just as he was saying this, Alwan suddenly pointed to the panoramic sand table, the direction being the second battlefield where the battle had already ended, only to see that on the devastated ground, large patches of hazy blood mist were boiling, and a strange magic circle emitting a faint purple light was faintly appearing as time went by. It became more and more obvious the scattered corpses of the island nations awakened seemed to be listening to some kind of call, their bodies twitching non-stop, their mouths wide open. In the next moment, a large amount of blood and internal organ fragments spurted out, scattering all over the ground, and then mixed with the mud, converging towards the vague magic circle. After a moment, the magic circle took shape, and accompanied by a burst of rising brilliance, a scorpion about 30 meters long, covered in hideous black and purple armor, quietly appeared afterwards. The scorpion carefully looked around a few times, quickly crawled out of the blood mist, and headed towards the direction where the Yamada no Orochi was located. What is this? Is it also a kind of fierce creature from the island nation? Looking at the big scorpion's sneaky and cautious appearance, Liang Yue frowned slightly, raised his sleeve, and an orange halo suddenly appeared beside him. Needless to say, this halo came from the lineage of the Supreme Mage's Space Gate. After his cultivation officially entered the Golden Core stage, Liang Yue's control over energy became more and more pure and refined, and his application of various space theories and space spells also kept up with the pace and ushered in a substantial improvement. At this time, he no longer needed the Zhuan ring in his hands to open a door. With a thought, he could simulate the entire process with spiritual power alone. After opening the space, Liang Yue glanced at the scene on the other side, and then flicked his finger. Swish! A golden ray of light shot out, as fast as light and lightning, and disappeared in a flash. Squeak! In the next moment, a non-human, stiff roar suddenly came through the seemingly basin-sized space channel. This sound was earth-shattering, sharp and fierce, mixed with a huge sense of pain. It startled the three pandas on the boat, and they didn't even bother to eat the big fish under them, stomping their feet repeatedly and quickly hiding behind Liang Yue and Alwan through the panoramic sand table. It can be found that the owner of this roar is the big scorpion at this moment. On its body's central axis, slightly behind the head, there was a golden long sword with a length of about 20 meters. The sword was slender and wide, and according to the proportion, at least 1/3 of the blade had been inserted into the scorpion's body, thereby penetrating it with one blow and nailing it to the ground. No matter how fierce it was, how much its pair of hideous front claws waved, or how its tail hook swung, it could not move half a point. It could be seen that the aura on this scorpion's body began to weaken more and more, and its vitality gradually faded away. On the other hand, the others nearby, including the Yamada no Orochi, seemed to have just come back to their senses at this time. Apart from being startled by the scorpion's roar at the beginning, by the time they discovered it, the long sword had already penetrated its entire body. Hi, is that Liang Yue? Come quickly and help us clean it up too. Seeing this scene, how could the women on the opposite side not know that Liang Yue was secretly protecting them? Shizuka simply shouted loudly in this direction. Aren't you doing pretty well? If you hold on for a few more hours, you might be able to grind this thing to death. Hearing this, Liang Yue immediately expanded the space channel in front of him and stuck his head out to say, I feel like it's meaningless to continue fighting like this. Xiao Zhao, after setting up another trap at this time, gasped for breath and turned her head to say to him, I'm tired. Hurry up and do it. Saya also said unhappily from the side. At this time the others around were also in a mood to not want to fight again. It seems that through this battle, the women have begun to realize their shortcomings. Alright, saying that, Liang Yue turned his gaze, and his eyes immediately met the fierce creature that was already full of wounds at this moment, but still exceptionally ferocious. Afterwards, the remaining 6 dragon heads swayed in unison, spitting a mouthful of thick poisonous mist towards the direction he was in. Like a green gelatinous bomb, it instantly plastered the front of the space channel. However, in the next moment, the poisonous smoke that had been condensed into ball dissipated. A giant hand appeared out of thin air, and the wide palm passed directly through the scattered smoke, extremely fast. In the blink of an eye, it had crossed hundreds of meters and arrived above the Yamada no Orochi. This big hand alone was more than 100 meters long, and it was purple all over. However, compared to the scorpion's previous dark purple color, this purple seemed majestic and luxurious, faintly glowing with golden light. The palm of this big hand seemed to contain a strange invisible force. As the 5 fingers closed, The Yamada no Orochi below was completely deformed in the end. It was forcibly kneaded into a ball. Chapter 612 Ki and Blood Condense into Pill. The technique Liang Yue used was naturally not a simple spiritual energy transformation. To be precise, it also incorporated the use of some special power. The Yamada no Orochi in this world, in terms of cultivation level, was only around the mid to late stages of the foundation establishment realm. Therefore, facing the natural suppression from a golden core cultivator, this guy had no resistance whatsoever. However, the opponent was, after all, a well-known ferocious beast, a top-tier existence in Japan. To just kill it directly would be such a waste. Thus, after compressing the opponent to a certain extent, Liang Yue immediately conjured more than a dozen branches of thunder, fire, and wood in his palm, infiltrating the special ball, and then began to transform it. Refining pills. The technique he followed was naturally the complete pill refining technique given to him by the Spirit Treasure sect. It's just that Liang Yue hasn't been able to delve into the field of pill refining for long, only learning a few relatively simple pill formulas in his spare time now. Targeting materials like the Yamada no Orochi's body, there are even fewer suitable pills to refine. After thinking it over, Liang Yue finally decided to use the body of this ferocious creature as material to refine a batch of the most basic Ki and Blood pills. Speaking of Ki and Blood pills, as the name suggests, they are pills that condense the physical Ki and Blood power of various creatures, removing the dross and extracting the essence of Ki and Blood. The more precious the material, the higher the level of the creature itself, and the more abundant its Ki, Blood, and bloodline, the better the effect of the pill will naturally be. Using the Yamada no Orochi in front of him as the main ingredient, the Ki and Blood pills refined should not be too bad. A moment later, as streams of flesh and blood essence were extracted in large quantities along the guidance of the thunder, fire, and wood branches, the Yamada no Orochi, which was suppressed by Liang Yue in a special ball, also began to wither more and more. Its body continuously shrunk, eventually leaving only a pile of skin and bones. The flesh and blood essence was then gathered in a large wooden barrel with a diameter of about 10 meters from a distance. The pile of blood material was bright red, with steaming heat and faint rays of light scattering. But the aura emanating from it carried a hint of fragrance. It was as if it were some kind of flower and fruit spiritual object, without the slightest bloody smell. Looking at the essence in the wooden barrel, Liang Yue pondered for a moment, then added a small ball of water vapor energy from his Danshin pond into it. After that, he began to condense these materials into pills with the assistance and blessing of thunder, fire, and wood. Refining this most basic Ki and Blood pill does not require any pill furnace at all. As long as you understand the principle of this pill, refining it is actually not difficult. In just a moment, red pills were poured out along a smooth wooden pipe, and finally placed in another large wooden barrel. At this time, the women around him had already gathered around, each frowning and looking at the pills in the barrel. It seemed that because of the problem with the pill refining materials, they couldn't get over it in their hearts, and they looked a little disgusted. These pills should be reserved for the children to heal their injuries and improve their cultivation. With that said, Liang Yue dispersed a conjured spiritual energy hand, and then controlled the special channel to come closer. Can this thing be eaten? Nana frowned with her little face at this time, sniffing with her nose. Of course it can be eaten. This is a Ki and Blood pill strictly refined according to the pill formula. In addition, the ball energy I added is a good thing, hard to find over time. If it is used for body refinement, it can support the disciple's consumption for at least half a year. As he said that, Liang Yue reached out and grabbed a handful from the barrel, feeding it to the three pandas beside him, one large and two small. The rest were all handed to Alwyn beside him. Really, Sae Takagi, upon hearing this, also took one from it, smelled it on her nose, and after feeling that there was no strange smell, she plucked up the courage to throw one into her mouth. After that, her face began to turn red at a speed visible to the naked eye. After a few seconds, heat began to radiate from her whole body. The whole person was like entering a sauna, with sweat pouring out uncontrollably. Looking at the three pandas here, they were also restless. At this time the large one jumped directly into the lake and began to swim frantically. The two small ones simply climbed to Alwyn's side, constantly calling for help. Then I have to take a few more, and I can use them to cultivate disciples in the future. Me too. Body refinement is too resource intensive. It's too wasteful to directly give spiritual medicine to the disciples. This kind of Ki and Blood pill can just treat the symptoms. In the end, under the embezzlement of the surrounding women, a large vat of Ki and Blood pills was directly scraped away by more than half. Shizuka, Siko, Zio Zhao, Nana, and others. Almost everyone took hundreds of them into their storage space, even Alwyn on the space channel side. After hearing the discussions of other people, also reached out with bright eyes and took away a batch. Fortunately, the Yamada no Orochi was large enough, and the condensed flesh and blood essence, plus the pool energy that Liang Yue added, condensed nearly 3,000 pills. Even if only half of the vat is left, it is enough for each disciple to share 2 pills after it's over. There should still be a lot of surplus. Maybe it can be used to trade with other Taoist people. I feel like it's still not enough. That's right, it would be great if it could be mass-produced. The pill refining material this time is the Yamada no Orochi. How easy is it to find this kind of thing, huh? Isn't there still a purple scorpion over there? What big scorpion? If I'm not mistaken, that should be a shikigami called guchen in the traditional Japanese cognition. A mere scorpion is worthy of being called guchen? Anyway, Liang Yue, what are you going to do with it? Cut off its head and tail, cook it and eat it, eh? That would be too wasteful. That's right. Like this Yamada no Orochi, it would be better to refine it into pills. Right, there should be enough ki and blood pills for now. It would be best if it could be made into ki refining pills. Yes, I think so too. Across the space channel, Liang Yue had nothing to say when he saw the women on the opposite side expressing their opinions one after another. Originally, I thought that such a big scorpion, with a hard shell, the meat inside should be like the arthropods of those big lobsters and big crabs, tender and springy. However, since you all want pills, I don't object. After saying that, Liang Yue turned his gaze and looked at the big scorpion hundreds of meters away, which was being nailed to the top of the mountain by his sword light, but was still lingering and struggling in vain. With a wave of his sleeve, he circled it into a closed space, and then slowly made it smaller, along with the bones of the Yamada no Orochi on the other side. He grabbed it in his hand. Okay, you guys go take care of the disciples first. If the injuries are serious and the treatment is more troublesome, send them back to the mountain gate directly. I'll study this pill first, how to refine it. Oh, by the way, take out 100 pills from these pills, 50 pills to give to the disciples of the Spirit Treasure sect, and the remaining 50 pills to distribute to other Taoist colleagues. After saying that, Liang Yue waved his hand to the woman and smoothed out the space channel. Turning his head, he found Alwyn, who was adjusting the medicinal power for the 2 half-grown pandas, just happened to look at him at this time, with a few questions in his eyes. What's wrong? I was thinking about whether pandas can cultivate. Pandas should be able to cultivate, but don't we not have any cultivation methods? Didn't that green scaled snake in the Heavenly Sect Cemetery not have any cultivation methods either? But it can break through the limitations of species and live much longer than ordinary snakes. That snake hides underground all day long. It should have eaten a lot of good things on weekdays. The current wisdom is already no less than that of humans. If these pandas also want to be like that, they have to be fed with some pills. I think we can also pass on cultivation methods to them like Rachel. Yes, cultivation needs to follow the theory of human meridians and acupoints, but magic doesn't have this limitation. Dameo has actually possessed good wisdom since childhood. Under my conditioning, there should be no problem in teaching some simple cultivation theories. Then do whatever you want. Chapter 613 Key Training Pill. In the time that followed, Liang Yue only stabilized his cultivation slightly before taking out the Taoist alchemy techniques and earnestly began to study them. There was no need to consider excessively profound elixirs or their formulas. The set of alchemy techniques that the Lingbao sect had initially given to Liang Yue was indeed profound, but with the changes in history, the Earth's environment and climate, as well as some human factors, many rare medicinal herbs, exotic beasts, and even spiritual medicines that once existed on Earth had become almost extinct. The more advanced the elixir, the more precious the required medicinal materials often were. Counting the entire collection of alchemy classics, there were more than 160 elixir formulas recorded. However, according to the intelligence accumulated by the intelligent AI, Xiao Wu, as well as the compilation of modern Chinese medicine and herbs, only 18 types remain that could gather all kinds of medicinal stone materials and be used to attempt to refine elixirs. Most of them were basic and low-level elixirs. However, the effects of these elixirs were still varied. For example, the most basic ki and blood pill for strengthening the body, the enlightenment pill to help people break through innate bottlenecks, the spirit opening pill to help various creatures awaken their intelligence, the detoxification pill for detoxification, the transformation pill for healing, and so on. The key refining pill that Liang Yue wanted to refine now also happened to be one of these 18 types of elixirs. The materials were not difficult to find. In addition to some common herbs such as ginseng, Polygonidum sibiricum, licorice, and Angelica dahirica, as long as they were matched with any 3 kinds of spiritual medicines with sufficient medicinal properties, few side effects, and no conflict with each other, That would suffice. The longer the age of the alchemy materials and the stronger the medicinal properties, the better the effect of the refined elixir. Like the large scorpion that was called Guchen in Japan before, it had already reached the level of a demonic beast, and its essence of flesh and blood could naturally be regarded as a kind of spiritual medicine. In addition, there was the pond energy in Liang Yue's danshan, which was full of vitality, and the earth's spiritual milk obtained from the heaven sword and dragon saber world, which naturally had the wonderful effect of increasing cultivation, consolidating cultivation, and to a certain extent, dispelling inner demons. It seemed that the elixir refined with these three spiritual medicines as the main ingredients should have quite a good effect. No sooner said than done. The materials for this key refining pill were readily available among the three main medicines. Besides the essence of flesh and blood of the large scorpion that he needed to extract, the other two, including a number of auxiliary materials, could be obtained easily in the stronghold world. The logistics base and herb garden that Liang Yue had painstakingly built before had finally reached a moment to show its due effect. A moment later, the 30-meter-long body of the large scorpion became as hunched and emaciated as the Yamada no Orochi before. All the vitality of its body was sucked clean. However, the monster's hard shell, pincers, and venom glands were good things. Like the Yamada no Orochi's skin and bones, they were all collected by Liang Yue into his Amino Iwado spaces for the spirits of these two minor demons. After consulting Nesta specifically, he temporarily sealed them with a layer of species, plus a stable gravitational structure, and threw them into Amino Iwado as well. Just like that, about a week later, the key refining pill was refined. Although the process of forming the key refining pill was much more complicated than the previous basic key and blood pill, this was not a problem for Liang Yue. After all, the essence of flesh and blood of the large scorpion was exhausted. A total of 1,000 pills were formed compared to the previous key and blood pill. The quantity was more than halved. However, this was also very normal. After all, the key refining pill was not simply comparable to key and blood energy. There were also many steps of medicinal power transformation in the middle, which would definitely cause some loss during the process. Except for the initial waste of one set of materials, the subsequent alchemy process could be described as smooth and rapidly improving. His control and fusion of firepower and heat inherently came with a skill bonus. Various micro-manipulation abilities inside the furnace were maxed out. In fact, the first set of materials that were wasted at the beginning was intentionally done by Liang Yue, deliberately used to test the degree of processing required for various medicinal properties, as well as the boundary between pill formation and waste pills. However, the difficulty of refining this kind of elixir fused with multiple herbs was indeed much higher. Even with the convenience of thunder, fire, and wood, Liang Yue could no longer operate the key and blood pill like flowing water falling to the ground as before. For the time being, he could only do it one furnace at a time. However, after all, practice makes perfect. I believe that with a continuous improvement of Liang Yue's own alchemy experience, multi-line operation will be no problem sooner or later. After the key refining pill was produced, the first tester was naturally the alchemist himself. Overall, the effect of this elixir was not bad. Taking one pill was roughly equivalent to Liang Yue's hard work for a week when he was still absorbing cosmic energy with the purple lotus before obtaining the great creation technique. Note that the unit of measurement here is the foundation establishment stage. If it were to be converted to when he was still in the innate realm, it would probably be the amount of nearly 3 months if the energy in it is further pushed down and placed in the acquired realm. It would take at least 4 or 5 years of hard work. Think about it. How many years in total did Liang Yue spend in the acquired realm since he started cultivating internal strength? Therefore, according to his speculation, this level of elixir should at least be at the level of a Shaolin lesser revitalizing pill. Right. Moreover, more than 1,000 pills were produced at once, in large quantities. It was not until this time that Liang Yue realized that he was really rich. In the past, he felt that everything was not enough, but that was only because his own progress was too fast, and the level of resources around him could not keep up. Now that he wanted to train disciples, he realized that he had unknowingly built up a large family business after the experiment. Liang Yue contacted the women through the village platform and exchanged information about the effects of this batch of key refining pills with them. After that, Arwen, who had always been indifferent to desires, took the initiative to run to his retreat and directly intercepted 50 pills from this batch of elixirs. Seeing this, Liang Yue thought for a while, and then kept 50 pills for himself, planning to use them to train disciples. The rest were all thrown through the space channel to Siko and Nanrika, who were eagerly waiting. In the time that followed, Liang Yue continued to retreat, studying various Taoist classics, and constantly trying to integrate the various methods he had mastered into this system at the same time. He continued to pay attention to the battles on the front lines compared with the original historical development trajectory. The Japanese under Liang Yue's nose seemed to have become much more reserved, although they were also attacking and conquering cities on all sides. They did not dare to cause any large-scale massacres. Moreover, after occupying some cities in the northeast, East China, and South China, the Japanese consciously slowed down their offensive pace and instead began to focus their main efforts on plundering local resources in terms of troop deployment. They had already switched to defense and consolidation. Relatively speaking, the two major forces on the Huaxia side had become much stronger in terms of strength compared to their original situation because, whether it was either of these two forces that came to Liang Yue to buy arms and ammunition, he did not refuse anyone. Occasionally, when the war was tense, he would directly sponsor a large batch of arms or military supplies. Therefore, in their respective battlefields, the two sides mostly fought back and forth with the Japanese, at least not losing so badly. Under the experience of blood and fire, there had been considerable progress in both combat capabilities and tactics, especially the rabbits. As time went on, the number of troops under their command increased more and more with a fairly good level of equipment. They had now captured many territories in the vast northern region, especially in the northeast. After Zhang Xiaoshui's military force was crushed by the Japanese and driven all the way into Guanyi, it was unknown when, but the rabbits had quietly taken root there at this time. Whether in the enemy's rear or front, there was already a tendency to spread everywhere. If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 614 The Japs and Chapter X27, Grand Strategy. Compared to the intense war situation at the front lines, the areas around Xi'an, which were most heavily influenced by the Streaming Cloud sect, and even the entire Guangdong region, appeared much more stable, especially within Xi'an City. Even though it wasn't far from the front lines, it hadn't been disturbed by any warfare. Even the reconnaissance planes of the Little Devils didn't dare to venture within 100 miles of its surroundings. Precisely because of this, a large number of eastern residents and merchants began to move their families and households here to seek refuge with the war situation at hand. This undoubtedly increased the pressure on the Guangdong region to some extent, but it also promoted its prosperity. Although Liang Yue had stated beforehand that he wouldn't participate in the domestic war, this didn't mean that he did nothing during this period. In addition to his daily cultivation and research into creating new techniques, this fellow had actually long since instructed the intelligent entity, Xiao Wu, to make plans, recruit workers on a large scale, and start up the related industries under the Streaming Cloud sect at full capacity. His goal was to help Huaxia establish a complete modern industrial system and related production chains before he finished his experiences and left the current DC world. Unlike the original historical development trajectory, the Maobear at this time had been completely ruined by him, not only divided into north and south, but also with greatly reduced national strength. Liang Yue himself had destroyed no less than 3 million of the Bear family's troops before and after. Under such hatred, it was unlikely that the rabbit would receive this series of support from the Maobear as before. Moreover, the Maobear, now in a state of division, was also facing a strong offensive from the south. Whether it could survive under the Fora's blitzkrieg was still unknown. Under such circumstances, Liang Yue obviously wouldn't place his hopes on such an awkward political country. He naturally had to bear the burden of the mess he had created himself. As the saying goes, where there are people, there is a world, and where there are people, there is eating, drinking, and shitting. Especially when there are more people, the consumption of various resources increases with a gradual implementation of a complete industrial system. The vast Guangdong region had begun to show signs of prosperity several years ago. A large number of people and talents from all over the country gathered here. The emergence of this situation naturally promoted the prosperity and development of the region, but the consumption in the meantime was indeed not small. Taking the various necessities such as grain, vegetables, meat, eggs, and milk as examples, the daily supply was a huge number. This was obviously a considerable problem in the Republic of China, where material resources were not abundant. Fortunately, Liang Yue had anticipated this and had already started preparing for it more than a decade ago. In addition to reclaiming new fields and hiring farmers and homeless people to help with farming, he also established a number of fertilizer plants, large-scale chicken, duck, and pig farms in the surrounding areas. Later, Liang Yue also specially established a pasture on the northern grasslands, and recruited local herders to help with grazing and management, which had already seen results. In addition, further north, on the vast Zuanwu Lake, a large number of lake fish would be caught ashore with the help of professionals every winter. In this era, transportation was a major problem, but for Liang Yue, it was not so. In just one round trip, he could bring back at least hundreds of thousands of tons of harvest. However, this was obviously not a long-term solution. Therefore, Liang Yue had been discussing with Baldi for many years to build a railway directly from Xi'an to Zuanwu Lake. Unfortunately, the administrative efficiency of those people in the south was too low, and there was still no charter to this day. In the past few years, some speculative merchants and gentry, either because they felt there was profit to be made, or to please him, they barely opened a trade route northward from the Mongolian grasslands. Although the road was narrow and tortuous, it could directly lead to Zuanwu Lake, specially engaged in the business of various types of wood, herbs, and fur from hunted beasts. It was also doing well. Seeing this, Liang Yue simply took some time out to widen this trade route from the original small road that could barely accommodate 2 carriages side by side. It was directly opened into a hard soil road surface that could accommodate 8 cars running side by side. As a result, the once deserted Zuanwu Lake has recently begun to have pioneers stationed and gathered. However, the lake is very large, and it was called the North Sea in ancient times. Most of those people are concentrated on the south bank, and are still a long distance away from this handy city established by Liang Yue. In this way, unknowingly, the time has come to 1940. In this year, the world situation is changing rapidly. Not only is Huaxia shrouded in war, but the European continent, which is deeply harmed by the aftermath of the economic crisis, is also involved in another fierce war. The scale of the war and the scope of its impact are even greater than the previous one, to the extent that even many countries that are not within the European scope have expressed their positions on this war and have begun to choose sides one after another during this period. Japan's choice was very interesting originally, according to the actual situation they faced, and the degree of support from Britain, France and other countries to the island country in this world. Joining the Anglo-French alliance would undoubtedly be a logical choice. However, perhaps because Huaxia has become stronger now, the Japanese simply cannot see the hope of conquering the mainland, so, after some weighing, they still resolutely threw themselves into the embrace of the Axis powers. As in history and with the passage of time, the Devil's main energy and core strategy have also shifted from Huaxia, and they have begun to invest heavily in the Philippines, Indonesia and other regions in recent years, in the more distant southern hemisphere region. There have even been reports and news of bloody conflicts between a large number of Japanese immigrants and local forces in the kangaroo country. Liang Yue can clearly observe from the panoramic sand table that Japan is constantly dispatching domestic troops and warships to station on the southern islands of Indonesia. Then, they are building military facilities on a large scale, hoarding troops, and trying to control the islands at sea, while also harassing the kangaroo country's fishing boats in the relevant sea areas. I have to say, the devils in this era are really not willing to be lonely, but such a small island country, if it really wants to take advantage of the situation to rise and get rid of its own predicament, they'll really have to take the initiative to open up a large enough and rich enough development space. Otherwise, facing the global wave that is coming, what awaits them can only be a fate of being controlled by others, lingering on, and constantly intensifying internal conflicts. Now that Liang Yue is in charge of Huaxia, it is basically impossible to forcibly occupy it. The purpose of Britain, France and other countries in supporting Japan is to have them contain Huaxia, but the problem is that, facing Liang Yue, such a inexplicably running out of the character, Britain and France have failed themselves, and they are afraid still expect the Japanese to work for them. The devils are obviously not that stupid, so, knowing that it cannot be done, they turned to declare war on the allied countries such as Britain and France, and stood with the Axis countries turning around to plunder those colonies, spheres of influence, and even the lands of the British Commonwealth that originally belonged to Britain and France is a feasible strategy among them. The Second European War has already contained most of the energy of Britain, France and other countries. The intensity of the war is rare in the world. Those powers have no time to take care of him now, and Huaxia itself has a large enough territory, and now it has to add such a large wasteland and forest in North Asia, so the devils think that Huaxia has no great interest in continuing to expand its territory, especially in the absence of naval power, to carry out overseas expansion. The only variable left is the United States. Chapter 615 Return. A flash of light, accompanied by a brief change of light and shadow before his eyes, Liang Yue finally returned to the stronghold world after a long absence. Incidentally, It also announced the completion of this all heavens experience. Looking around at the familiar scene and taking a deep breath, the burden that was originally on his shoulders also loosened imperceptibly. His whole person seemed to become lazy because of this. In fact, it was okay for Siko and Alwyn, as long as Liang Yue agreed. They could come back at any time, and even choose to give up the experience midway. However, as their first official all heavens trip with Liang Yue, the young ladies still chose to see it through to the end, insisting on accompanying him to the last. There is nothing to say about the remaining years in the DC world. It was nothing more than rushing to deal with some of the aftermath after they left various industrial handovers, nuclear weapon button handovers, Mountain Gate inheritance and headmaster position handovers, as well as the careful teaching of the disciples among them. The most important thing was the teaching of disciples. The outer and inner disciples in the Liuyan sect were fine, judging from the inheritance system and disciple level division of other Taoist sects. The combat effectiveness of his disciples had already exceeded a certain limit. They had reached the level of elite inner disciples, and even core disciples of ordinary sects. After all, when Liang Yue and a group of young ladies taught them skills, although there was a certain degree of differential treatment, what they passed down were genuine good things. Various internal skills and methods of cultivating immortals and refining ki were taught uniformly from the very beginning. Various second and third-rate exercises in the Mountain Gates library were also open for supply and comparison. It is debatable whether outer or even ordinary inner disciples in other Taoist sects can obtain a true inheritance. This has inadvertently caused a more serious problem, that is, within a long period of time, the strength gap between the numerous outer and inner disciples and the core and true disciples was not very obvious, especially when it coincided with the war years, under the experience of fighting the enemy on the real battlefield and the ups and downs of the troubled times. Many disciples were inadvertently forced to explode with powerful potential. It can be said that as long as one is not too unlucky, and one's aptitude is really dull and unteachable, most people can always comprehend some insights that belong to them in this environment. Many disciples' cultivation levels have therefore been raised to a higher level. After all, the palms and backs of the hands are both flesh, and no matter how closely they are connected with the outside world, and how complicated the various interest entanglements in the family are, they are still people they have watched grow up since childhood. They could not be too biased after this. Liang Yue and others also made up their minds and began to continuously increase the teaching and resource investment for core disciples and true disciples, in addition to the direct teaching of various secret techniques and exercises, until Liang Yue and the others left the DC world. All the true disciples, whether they were disciples of Liang Yue, the headmaster, or the direct disciples of Siko and Alwyn, had all entered the innate realm. Among them, the one with the best aptitude and talent had even reached the middle stage of the innate realm. In addition, 11 people had already comprehended their own innate images. The vast majority of the core disciples had also entered the innate realm, and another 5 people had comprehended innate images. The rest were also hovering on the edge of breaking through, and what they lacked was actually just an opportunity. As for Liang Yue's official successor, the next headmaster of the Liuyan sect, someone directly stuffed the basic key nurturing method of heavenly creation into his mind in the form of telepathic transmission. As for how much he can comprehend from it, it depends on his luck anyway. Before leaving, Liang Yue had left a lot of knowledge and inheritance about space in the sect, and even taught them the gate opening technique using the mysterious ring as a guide. If they really put their heart into it, they will definitely be able to find a lot of inspiration from it. After arranging all of this properly, Liang Yue and others announced their retreat to the outside world and no longer cared about the complicated affairs outside. By the way, in a certain year before leaving the DC world, probably not long after the start of the Pacific Naval Battle, Liang Yue personally went to Tokyo, Japan with a move of Earth Explosion Star. He completely rounded the place called the Sacred Mountain by the island country Interball and threw it into Tokyo. Afterwards, he used the Druid's Doomsday Volcano on the spot, consuming half of the magic power in the magic heart, and summoned a volcano several times larger than Mount Fuji from the ground and communicated with the magma veins, turning it into an active volcano. Then he used the Doomsday Battlefield to play with the descent of heavenly fire in the sky above Tokyo and surrounding areas, raging for 3 full days before leaving. Then, unsurprisingly, only a week later, the island country unilaterally announced its surrender to China. Of course, this position of surrender only involved their battlefield layout towards China. As for the Indonesian archipelago, the Philippines and other countries, as well as the vast Pacific battlefield, the devils were still unwilling and wanted to persevere in this regard. Liang Yue expressed his understanding. The rabbit and bald eagle duo who went to negotiate only asked them to return Taiwan, the Ryukyu Islands and other places, and signed a large amount of post-war compensation before ignoring them subsequently. a large number of Japanese troops began to disarm and surrender batch by batch under the supervision of various domestic forces, and then left China with their families, or retreated to North Korea. A large number of properties, precious metals, antiques and cultural relics that were plundered during the invasion were also recovered item by domestic experts with a list. Of course, this batch of properties and cultural relics will definitely not be counted as part of the war reparations. In short, Liang Yue's system tasks could not be sloppy. There is a lot of land outside the mainland, but China is already big enough at this time, and there is no need to ask for too much. And speaking of the system task system, I want to settle the task at this time. It was evening in the stronghold world, and a bright full moon in the sky was constantly releasing silver light. Hinata and teacher Shizuka, who had returned to the stronghold world earlier, had also prepared a hearty meal in the top-level space of the library in advance. As soon as Liang Yue and others landed, it was like returning home, and they naturally took their seats and drank from the glasses in their hands. After testing, in the main mission Protect China of this All Heavens experience, the host has achieved the mission goal with relatively excellent results in this regard. The reward given by the system is 12,000 points, multiplied by 5, an additional lottery permission, and in this lottery permission, the host can add a keyword to limit the lottery range. After testing, in the side mission Getting Better of this All Heavens experience, the host's cultivation has crossed a major realm and entered the Golden Core stage and initially summarized his own cultivation system. In this regard, the reward given by the system is a random Golden Core stage cultivation method gift box, multiplied by 3, and 10,000 points, multiplied by 3 and a random lottery permission. After calculation, the rewards obtained by the host in this All Heavens experience are 90,000 MOL points, 3 Golden Core stage cultivation method gift boxes, and 2 additional lottery permissions. Chapter 616 Innate Imagery. Yo! This reward is pretty good. I thought it was going to be a letdown this time. During this DC World experience, the system only issued 2 tasks to Liang Yue, and the boundaries of the tasks were very vague. The former was to protect China, without saying how to protect it, just asking him to escort it, but the specific scale and standard were not explicitly defined at all. Liang Yue could only rely on his own understanding to try his best to achieve perfection in all aspects. Originally, he thought that he had failed to promote the end of the Civil War, which was an overlooked item, and would be severely deducted points. Now it seems that this line is not the only measure. His actions of seizing the vast northern Asian wilderness from Tsarist Russia, leaving behind nearly 1,000 nuclear missiles, and establishing a modern industrial system in the country also greatly affected the task evaluation. Of course, Japan's final declaration of surrender to China should also be included in the evaluation. As for the task that required him to gradually improve in terms of cultivation, it was probably the same. Advancing to the Golden Core stage was a clear bonus, but the creative path of cultivating the tree heart Golden Core with a small tree in the Danshin, including his actions to integrate his own series of spells, may not be. I want to receive the mission rewards. After taking a sip of wine, Liang Yue said with satisfaction. The task reward has been issued. As the system's voice fell, with a clang, 3 dark red boxes suddenly fell on the table in front of him. Needless to say, these boxes must be the so-called Golden Core Stage Cultivation Method random gift boxes. In addition, on his personal panel, points and lottery permissions were also credited. Instantly seeing this scene, the women who were originally drinking wine, exchanging their experiences, and expressing their reluctance to part with their disciples, also looked over. Among them, Nana, Nanlik Xiang, and Xia Jiang directly reached out and took a box each, looking at the sly, expectant expressions on the faces of the women opposite. Liang Yue just smiled lightly, and then continued to say to the system, I want to draw a lottery. First draw the one without conditions. As soon as he finished speaking, the familiar big turntable appeared in front of Liang Yue. He just glanced at it subconsciously, and then directly ordered start. Stop. Ling. Congratulations to the host for obtaining the treasure medicine 10 seeds of Biham Yaoxian grass in this lottery. This spiritual medicine comes from a certain Xiangsha world and is suitable for growing in low temperature and spiritual rich deep water. The mature Biham Yaoxian grass will contain a trace of innate spiritual energy with ice-cold attributes in the medicinal body. After taking it, low-level practitioners can guarantee 100% entry into the innate realm. At the same time, this herb also has the effect of enhancing the purity of the user's own ice-cold attributes, improving the ice-cold attribute physique, and the power of related spells. A small, palm-sized transparent box, seemingly made of ice crystals, suddenly appeared in Liang Yue's hand. In a flash of light through the carved box lid, you could see 10 corn kernel-sized seeds inside, and a trace of cold air was constantly emanating from the seeds. The ice crystal box conducted the cold to his palm, and Liang Yue couldn't help but shudder. His originally drunken and hazy eyes suddenly cleared up. Looks like a good thing, but unfortunately, I don't need it much. Saying that, he scanned the women who were busy opening boxes next to him several times, and then casually put the box on the table. Speaking of which, Liang Yue and his family had already comprehended their own innate vision several years ago under his almost hand-in-hand guidance. Among them, senior sister Siko performed the most easily, because she followed a way of swordsmanship, and had already comprehended the ability of swordlight in the acquired realm. After advancing to the innate realm, the swordlight naturally became her innate vision. Moreover, unlike Liang Yue's concurrent cultivation, with his main energy still focused on thunder, fire, and wood, senior sister Siko, who specializes in swordsmanship, has now developed many application methods for sword light. The second person to comprehend the innate vision was the elf princess Arwen. This girl, unless she encounters orcs or serious demons, will generally not take action to kill. Therefore, in most cases, she sits in the rear mountain gate, and has relatively more time to cultivate. In addition, the elves are naturally close to nature, so her innate vision is wood. The reference is a 1,000-year-old tree growing deep in the kindling mountains. She also follows the same idea as Liang Yue, using wood attributes to return to the origin and explore the essence of life. The third person to make a breakthrough was a bit unexpected. It was actually teacher Jinxiang, who also didn't like to fight very much, but liked to join in the fun. The reason why this sister can comprehend the innate vision before others is probably because she has a deep understanding of the paladin's ultimate skill, Fist of the Heavens, and has her own understanding of it. In addition, the innate vision, to a certain extent, may also have a lot of overlap with the paladin's aura-like skills. In short, the innate vision that teacher Jinxiang finally comprehended is a special branch of the thunder attribute, or, it is a product of the combination of two attributes like thunder, the power of lightning with light attributes. It is basically equal to the paladin's ultimate skill, the replica version of Fist of the Heavens. The next one to come up was Xiao Zhao. This woman also took advantage of the convenience of the dark career, and comprehended the power of nature from the skills, and what she comprehended was also the thunder and lightning innate vision. But what is different from teacher Jinxiang's light thunder is that Xiao Zhao's comprehension of thunder and lightning was inspired by the assassin's trap. Like highest skill guardian of the dead while exerting the power of thunder, it can also detonate the death energy on the corpse. In short, it looks weird. After that, Aunt Beihiko came to break through. Her main attack direction is ice magic, and the innate vision she comprehended is also the ice system. The reference is the ice attribute advanced auxiliary skill cold mastery. Then came Nana. Somewhat unexpectedly, this little girl actually comprehended a special earth attribute innate vision according to Nana herself. It seems that it was because she often ran to the storage location of the earth crystal for a while to observe the structure of that thing, and the earth crystal itself is the essence of the earth vein, which can continuously condense the earth spirit milk and other natural treasures, which is very extraordinary. Therefore, the earth attribute innate vision that Nana comprehended naturally also carries a certain instinct to purify and condense the power of the earth vein. The next to break through were Yang Buhu and Nan Lixiang. These two people found their own development path almost at the same time. The former borrowed from the assassin's profession, the ultimate skill of the martial arts system Phoenix Wings Soaring, and comprehended a strange composite energy vision, which can be converted back and forth between fire, thunder, and ice. It's just that the operation is not as flexible as Liang Yue's thunder, fire, and wood, and it is not as convenient as others. It needs to meet certain conditions. However, the potential of this energy is obviously very good, and even Yang Buhu's original martial arts true energy has been affected by it, and began to transform in an unknown direction. Nan Lixiang's innate vision is in the direction of the gold attribute. The inspiration comes from a magic scroll that Liang Yue once bought from the system store, the gold magic iron thorn technique. After getting it, Liang Yue has been putting it on the shelf and put it in the library of the stronghold world. I don't know when this big sister Nan Lixiang became interested in it, but the innate vision of the gold attribute is very suitable for her usual firearms. After that, the little eagle Rachel, who completed the breakthrough, her comprehension direction is wind. Regarding this point, no one else in the Lao Liang family was surprised. After all, thanks to the power of the wind phantom dragon template, the little eagle at this time has evolved into dragon eagle form. She already has a unique understanding of the power of wind. The next person to complete the breakthrough was Hinata, probably because, after she completed the fusion of chakra and spiritual power, she had her own set of experience and summary on the nature transformation of different energies. The innate vision that Hinata comprehended is also a relatively special energy body in terms of inspiration. They also come from the martial arts skill tree of the assassin profession. It's just that what is different from Liang Yue who is that Hinata's comprehension is more basic, pure, and the perspective tends to be microscopic. The form of expression of its innate vision is to summon some special energy balls around itself to complete various combined operations. From this point of view, Hinata's innate vision is actually more similar to the plasma energy balls of Li Qianhun and X-Men. Even Liang Yue was amazed and surprised after seeing it in the end. Ranked at the end of his Lao Liang family, the person who finally comprehended his innate vision, unexpectedly, was Gao Chengxia, who has always regarded himself as a high IQ person, and the reason why Shea spent the most time is not because her comprehension ability is not enough. On the contrary, this lady has too many ideas she is unwilling to break through so ordinarily. She wants to make a big news and get something high-end and high-grade. Therefore, from the very beginning, Shea went straight to the research direction of space magic. However, involving knowledge in the field of space, it is indeed not difficult to draw scope and cast spells in this direction, but if you really want to study the true meaning of space, Liang Yue dare not guarantee that there will be results. Therefore, after spending a lot of time, Shea Zhang finally only got a half knowledge and was confused. Without any other way, she could only retreat and reluctantly turn her research direction back to the lightning magic that she majored in the dark mage profession. Through the exploration of the teleport skill, she finally comprehended a kind of lightning power that can directly break through space. Chapter 617, Dimensional Space. Soon, accompanied by the exclamations of the women, 3 cultivation manuals of different sizes, colors, and thicknesses were placed on the table in front of them. Then, with Liang Yue's anticipation, the young ladies opposite began to announce what they had received. We drew a cultivation method called GUI Yuanju. The content seems similar to the Ling Yuan Guang that you created yourself. Brother, the method is balanced and doesn't have any attribute biases, but its strength lies in its safety and reliability. It can be cultivated from the key training stage all the way to the great perfection of the golden core stage. Nana patted the large pile of secret manuals in front of her with a look of surprise. Looking at Liang Yue, such good luck? Then we won't lack cultivation methods for a long time to come. After learning from it, it will inevitably make his path of cultivation smoother. We drew a cultivation method specifically for refining weapons, called Mu Yang Dian. The name of this secret manual seems to be related to its creator. In addition to recording a large number of weapon refining techniques, the manual also records many formations related to weapon refining, which can be regarded as making up for our shortcomings in this area. It's a bit of a pity that this book has relatively high entry requirements. It is said that only people in the Golden Core realm can fully master it, but people in lower realms should also be able to try to learn a little. Tisk. Obviously, Saya Chan, who has not yet entered the Foundation Establishment realm, has a lot of opinions about this weapon refining secret manual that she just drew. Clearly, the good stuff is right in front of her, but she can't implement it well due to her cultivation level. It's very tangled. It seems that our equipment will soon be upgraded. Good stuff, good stuff. Liang Yue's smile became brighter again when he heard this, and he looked very happy. As for Saya Chan's little emotions, he didn't have much to say. If her cultivation is not enough, then she should practice harder anyway. If she can practice, it means that his whole family will benefit from it, and that's enough. We drew a cultivation method called 7 Absolute Sword Key. It looks like a very powerful sword art. It seems to be a cultivation method that can be cultivated from the initial stage all the way to the Golden Core stage and beyond. Xiao Zhao also interjected at this time, her bright and moving little face full of excitement and surprise while speaking. She and Yang Yuhu, Hinata, and others couldn't help but start flipping through it, especially Siko Senpai, who rushed over as soon as she heard that they had drawn a sword art 7 Absolute Sword Key. Yes, is 7 Absolute Sword Key so powerful? Can it be cultivated to the Golden Core stage? Chunkyu, do you know this secret manual? I know a little. Does this sword art come from a martial arts family called the Lin family? It seems to be true, and besides the sword art, it also includes a profound finger technique. Yes. Key sword finger, 1 yang finger, and so on. Then that's right. Practice hard. This is a good cultivation method, but it's best not to use it as your main method, and try to use it as a reference as much as possible. Oh, didn't you also draw a lottery just now? What good stuff did you get? A kind of spirit herb seed that can be used to Liang Yue told the women about the uses of the Biham Yaoxian grass, then reached out to the side. Wanting to show them the seeds in the small box, unexpectedly he touched empty air. Where are my seeds? Looking strangely at the empty table beside him, Liang Yue suddenly felt puzzled and subconsciously looked at Xiao Jin Gang, who was gobbling up food. He blinked, and then a realization surged into his heart. He turned to look at the woman and said, maybe my mom took it. The old lady also likes to play with these flowers and plants. I saw our peach tree in her quiet cultivation place last time, eh? Is mother-in-law always watching us? Of course. Occasionally, my mom will take some snacks from here to enjoy. I see. Then we should make an extra portion when we make meals in the future. Yes, that's the idea. System, I want to draw a lottery. This time, limit the prize range to the magic system compared to Liang Yue and others. Alwyn and Rachel, due to their innate physical conditions, are not suitable for cultivating martial arts truki and the cultivation system, so magic has become their way out. But regarding the cultivation methods in the field of magic, apart from a magic book that my mother sent over before, there are not many around them. There are indeed many kinds of magic books in the Supreme Hall outside, but in Liang Yue's view, those things are flawed. The power of some of the spells and techniques is indeed very strong, and it has considerable reference significance for Liang Yue and others, but the problem is that there is no real method to help cultivators go further and improve their own life level. The philosophy of the people in the Supreme Hall is like treating people's bodies as containers, carrying and storing magic power, and then using magic to launch it out. In this process, it may passively produce some benefits for the magicians, but there is no real method to help them break through the level of life. Even some of the talented people among them have achieved this through their own efforts. For example, Dormammu, the ruler of the Dark Dimension, originally just a wizard, he relied on his own personal opportunities and luck. And with the help of the energy of the Dark Dimension, he achieved promotion in another way, which did not have much universality at all. Therefore, when they were still training in the DC world and the women were breaking through the Xiantian realm, Liang Yue secretly decided that he would pay extra attention to the collection of various magic books in the future. Soon, as Liang Yue's voice fell, a large turntable appeared in front of him again without any hesitation. After limiting the range of prizes, he directly ordered start-stop. Ling. Congratulations to the host for obtaining a dimensional space scroll in this lottery. This scroll comes from a certain intermediate fantasy world. The scroll records a method of opening a dimensional space. Each cultivator has their own exclusive dimensional space. Depending on the individual's talent and cultivation level, the size of the dimensional space will vary. Dimensional space? Is it a portable pocket? As the system's voice fell, in the blink of an eye, Liang Yue had a thick magic scroll in his hand, but it was then snatched by Rachel, who was waiting for an opportunity. Then, under the onlookers of the women, she opened the scroll and started reading it with great interest. Speaking of which, it would have been better if this thing had appeared earlier. In the DC world, it could have been used to teach the disciples in the sect. But now it seems a bit redundant. Looking at the focused appearance of the people opposite, Liang Yue was also a little puzzled. How could it be? Dimensional space is a good thing, so what? Don't we already have a storage backpack? This dimensional space is everyone's exclusive item. Just like your Shinyanto. That's right. We don't know how envious we are. Okay, by the way, when the system was upgraded before, besides that unlimited level lottery, weren't there some other things? Oh, that's right, I almost forgot if you didn't mention it. It seems that there is a random copy and a public world selection opportunity. Chapter 618 Miracle Medicine Lucky Bag. As a major event concerning the system's permission upgrade, Liang Yue naturally gained more than just one unlimited level lottery draw during this update. In fact, the selection of random dungeons instances and the selection of the second public world were only part of the updated content. However, at that time, Liang Yue was still on his journey through the heavens, and most of the other content could not be implemented except for the unlimited level lottery draw. The selection of random and public worlds required him to perform it after returning. In addition, Liang Yue's subsequent frequency of traversing the heavens, after this fifth permission update, was extended from once every 3 natural months to 12 months, that is, once a year. Then, the time flow ratio between the public world and the stronghold world was also extended from the original 1 to 5 or 5 to 1 to 1 to 30 or 30 to 1. In other words, previously, 1 day in the public world was equivalent to 5 days in the stronghold world. Conversely, if Liang Yue needed it, he could also adjust it to 5 days in the public world and only 1 day in the stronghold world. Now, every day that passes in the stronghold world is equivalent to a month in the public world, and vice versa. In addition, the time flow ratio between the stronghold world and reality has also been extended from the original 5 to 1 to 10 to 1, 1 day in reality, 10 days in the stronghold world. However, this time flow cannot be adjusted because the stronghold world serves as a transfer station. The public world and reality have also completed in direct time linkage with each other. However, Due to the particularity of time and world theory, the time flow ratio between the public world and reality is 40:1. Although it is a bit difficult to understand, this is the final answer the system gave Liang Yue. In addition to these 2 points, there is also more substantial content. The number of villagers has increased again before this permission upgrade. Liang Yue originally had 20 places. Siko, Alwyn, Xiao Zhao, plus his mother and Nesta, had used 13 places in total after the upgrade. The number of villagers suddenly increased to 50, leaving 37 empty spaces. In addition, Liang Yue also had 100 indigenous places that he had not used, and this time they were also expanded to 500. In addition to this, the spiritual energy concentration in the stronghold world also increased to the next level according to the system. Under the current energy level, the stronghold world can independently produce species mutations, herb level promotions, and the gestation of various natural treasures and other benign developments. It is just suitable for Siko, Hinata, and others to break through the foundation establishment stage. For Liang Yue, a golden core cultivator, it is an ordinary and just right cultivation environment. It should be possible to barely break through to the nascent soul stage, but there will definitely not be a situation where the environment carries people to fly. If you want to ensure quality and quantity, and improve quickly, the foundation nascent key method of good fortune is still an indispensable method. These are the few points that Liang Yue values most in the system permission upgrade. Other update content is mostly minor adjustments, so I won't mention them for now. By the way, following this system upgrade, the Stronghold World upgrade task, which had been silent for a long time, finally began to be issued again. The task is divided into 2 major items. One of them temporarily only requires Liang Yue to introduce 50 kinds of spirit-level plants. The other requires him to enter the hell space of the Stronghold World and establish a solid and reliable safety base. The latter, the task about the safety base, had already been completed by Alwyn and Xiao Zhao when they were still in the DC world. The introduction of spirit-level plants is a difficult point, so much so that Liang Yue searched the entire DC Earth and did not collect enough 10 species. Fortunately, with the settlement of the system task, the MWA points have finally arrived. That's a full 90,000 points. I remember that the last time he returned from the Naruto world, Liang Yue had obtained something called Primary Spirit Herb Bag through lottery permission. After opening it, you can randomly get 10 kinds of 1st to 3rd level spirit herbs or spirit level plants. The Rain Mist Spirit Tea that Liang Yue and others usually drink now was drawn from the medicine bag at that time as for this kind of random herbal gift pack. In fact, from the first moment it appeared, it had already been put on the shelves of the system wall. However, the price of this spirit medicine bag is a bit high. It costs 5,000 points to buy one. For Liang Yue, who has been struggling on the poverty line, it is obviously a luxury that can only be viewed from a distance, and can only quench his thirst with plums for the time being. Now it's better, he has just finished the experience, and he has points again. In order to complete the Stronghold World upgrade task as soon as possible, Liang Yue will naturally spare no expense. Thinking of this, someone suddenly felt a surge of pride, and with a thought, he summoned the system wall and found the counter where the primary spirit herb bag was stored. With a wave of his hand, he filled in 10 in the purchase quantity box. However, after seeing clearly the points that were about to be paid, this guy suddenly became clear-headed again, and silently adjusted the quantity to 5 anyway. The task of collecting spiritual plants is cumulative, and the previous ones count, so there is no need to be extravagant. So, under the gaze of the woman opposite, Liang Yue put 5 spirit medicine bags on the table, and then continued, "You guys open the spirit medicine first, and we will finish the task of upgrading the Stronghold World together, and then choose the dungeon instance and the public world A. Are we going to draw a lottery again? This time, Shizuka, I must perform well. By the way, how many kinds of spirit medicines are we still short of for our Stronghold World upgrade? I heard that the previous one seemed to count, so we should still be short of 20 or so. One spirit medicine bag can open 10 kinds of spirit level plants. Leaving aside those species that may be repeated, these 5 bags should be enough. Then let's start. Watch me go first." Hey, a moment later, a pile of strange-shaped herbs suddenly appeared on the open space on the top floor of the library tower. Some of them were half-sized saplings, some were bean sprout-like seedlings, some were patches of mushroom clusters, and some were clusters of shrubs. At this time, this pile of medicinal materials was piled up in a mess, and under the illumination of the silver moonlight, it emitted a little bit of strange brilliance. Ice spirit fruit, sky spirit fruit, illusion heart grass, light spirit grass. By the way, if this batch of medicinal materials can grow smoothly, At least more than half of the elixirs recorded in the alchemy classics sent by the Spirit Treasure sect before can be refined, not to mention anything else. The Foundation Establishment Pill is definitely no problem, eh? After having the Foundation Establishment Pill, can we also try to break through? You can break through even without the Foundation Establishment Pill. If you really wait for the spirit medicine to mature, it will take at least 10 years. Right, I'm afraid it's more than that. The medicinal properties of spirit medicines that are too young should not be very good, unless they are planted in the public world, so that with the help of the unequal time flow between different planes we can harvest a spirit medicine more calmly. However, if this batch of spirit medicines wants to grow healthily with guaranteed quality and quantity, the spiritual energy environment is also a very critical issue. It may not be enough to rely on the level of the water margin world alone. So having said that, the women who were originally picking and choosing in the pile of spirit medicines, making comments, suddenly turned their gazes to Liang Yue one by one. The expressions in their eyes were self-evident. Seeing this, Liang Yue rolled his eyes, but facing the expectations of the women, he seemed very calm at the moment. Don't worry, I already have arrangements for this matter. Task name, Cultivation Civilization. 1. Task requirements, collect a batch of plant species with a quality that reaches the spirit level, and plant them in a suitable area in the stronghold world. The number is no less than 50. Task reward, exclusive mall opens, environmental evolution. Task name, Cultivation Civilization. 2. Task requirements, open the gate of hell and establish a complete safety base in the hell space of the stronghold world. Task reward, Ice Domain. Chapter 619 Fantasy Suikoden 2. The above two tasks are the specific content issued for this stronghold world upgrade. To be honest, judging from the comparison of input and output, this is more cost-effective than the missions during the various heavenly trials, and according to the system's explanation, regarding the rewards in these two tasks, the exclusive shop goes without saying. It is naturally a mechanism similar to the system shop, except that its content is dedicated to the stronghold world. Therefore, the goods and content within will naturally lean more towards the stronghold world. The Ice Domain reward in a second task refers to the system additionally opening a terrain called Ice Domain within the hell space of the stronghold world in order to achieve a balanced mechanism for that area, which was originally only covered in lava and had a hot temperature. As for the so-called environmental evolution reward, it refers to a mode similar to the equal distribution and other rewards in the previous upgrades, achieving the evolution like a real natural world. At that time, the entire stronghold world will enter a crazy time acceleration. In fact, the system uses the evolution of time to optimize the environment of this entire plane and complete the guidance in the direction of development. During this process, the time that passes will not affect the village where Liang Yue and others are located, but this method of time acceleration is real. Outside the village, various evolutions of mountains and rivers, the withering and flourishing of vegetation, and the reproduction and evolution of species will all be staged. Taking advantage of this convenience, Liang Yue can completely sow the spiritual herbs in his hand and advance in a specific area outside the village, and wait for the stronghold world to complete the upgrade. After which the outside world will have passed an unknown number of years. By then, what awaits them must be a great harvest. This method is almost like cheating for Liang Yue and others. It is a pity that there should not be too many upgrades to the stronghold world. So, after Liang Yue told the girls opposite him what he was thinking, the young ladies immediately reacted, and each of them couldn't help but become beaming and itchy. Then they directly opened the portable map, and according to the instructions recording the planting methods of spiritual herbs, they began to carefully look for suitable places to plant spiritual herbs. Liang Yue, on the other hand, simply gritted his teeth and bought 5 more elementary spirit herb bags from the system store. Based on the position of not missing anything good, he prepared to add new firewood to this almost pre-ordered harvest. Soon, under the vigorous and collective efforts of everyone, nearly 100 kinds of low-level spiritual herbs in their hands were planted by Liang Yue and others in various locations in the stronghold world in just half a day only. Then did I feel a little more secure in my heart. After returning to the village, under the expectant eyes of teacher Jinxiang and others, Liang Yue first sent messages to his mother and Nesta. He told them about the imminent upgrade of the stronghold world and the accelerated passage of time in the area outside the village. However, these two people didn't care about it at all. According to my mother, she can just take this opportunity to experience the rules and advantages and disadvantages of this world. Nesta, on the other hand, is studying Liang Yue's Taoist supernatural power, Xiangang's first transformation good fortune of the universe, which he uploaded to the shared area before it takes a lot of time to retreat. Liang Yue had nothing to say about this, but secretly decided in his heart that when he reaches that realm in the future, he must also experience the wonders here. Okay, now everything is ready. By the way, Rachel, do you still want to call your group of giant eagle descendants over again? Returning to the top floor of the library tower, after arranging everything, Liang Yue suddenly thought of something just as he was about to submit the task, so he turned his head and looked at Rachel, who was possessed by the canna sauce mode. Holding a cup in both hands and pouring wine into her mouth. No need, they have all grown up now and no longer need the care of a senior like me. If I'm in a good mood one day, I will go and find a few younger generations to train. Specifically after hearing his words, Rachel was obviously stunned, hesitated for a few seconds, and then replied in a calm tone, what about you? Didn't you also value those giant eagles very much before? Hearing this, Liang Yue turned his gaze to Senior Siko, Aunt Yuriko and others next to him. 30 or 40 years have passed. Now they have already formed their own families and have children and descendants. I did go to see them when I was training before, but they are already a little estranged. It's about the same on my side. Okay, system, I want to submit the task. Seeing that the girls didn't care much, Liang Yue stopped worrying about anything, and directly contacted the system with a thudding. The upgrade conditions for the Stronghold world have been fully met, and some rewards have now been distributed. This world upgrade and environmental evolution are expected to take a week. May I ask the host, do you want to upgrade immediately? Upgrade. Swish! In a flash of light, an arc-shaped milky white light curtain rose instantly, covering the entire village. In an instant, the stars shifted, and the sun and moon alternated above the sky outside. Clouds of clouds separated and gathered, passing through the sky, and waves of waves lapped on the beach in the distance. The situation was like a convulsion. Occasionally, the figures of seagulls and waterbirds appeared in the distant sky, but their flying speed was faster than sitting on a scud rocket. It will disappear in the blink of an eye. Looking at the scene in front of him that was like a fleeting moment, Liang Yue couldn't help but sigh in his heart that all things in this world are really unpredictable. Fragile but tenacious. Time slipped away in front of him like this. But he didn't have time to play any sentimental games. After shaking his head gently and driving the distracting thoughts out of his mind, Liang Yue looked at the girls next to him and then said, let's take advantage of this time to draw the dungeon and the public world. Saying that, Liang Yue contacted the system again, preparing to start selecting a dungeon. The young ladies were obviously more concerned about this lottery than before, and immediately gathered behind him, staring at his operation with burning eyes. Stop. Ling. Congratulations to the host for obtaining the large open dungeon Sukaden II in this dungeon lottery. After being transformed by the system, the dungeon has been adjusted to 3 difficulty levels: normal, warrior, and heroic. In the dungeon with the highest difficulty, the characters inside will have the same level of intelligence as ordinary people in the real world. After certain conditions are met, they can be taken out of the dungeon as native Sukaden. Why is it this dungeon? Looking at the final option that appeared in front of him, Liang Yue scratched the back of his head and wondered. In his heart he thought to himself, this time's dungeon lottery, I'm afraid I'm out of luck. Right. Chapter 620 Wind and Cloud World. How is it? Isn't this dungeon great, Sukaden II? Is it another story related to the water margin? If that's the case, the two could be linked together, right? Judging from the footage converted from the dungeon, there are indeed many scenes of leading troops into battle, but analyzing it from the perspective of clothing, it doesn't seem to be set in China. You can even bring people out from the dungeon. It's also divided into 3 difficulties, so it shouldn't be worse than Diablo 2, right? Liang Yue, how much do you know? Much worse, eh? If this dungeon is purely based on the level of power and background settings, it is indeed much worse than Diablo 2, but think about the previous Water Margin Heroes world. Since the system said it has been modified, it must have its own merits. Maybe it will really become as good as Diablo 2. Then what kind of story is this, Sukaden? Is it also about the heroes of Liangshan? No, it just extracts the setting of the 108 generals. In fact, it is a story about a small character protagonist traveling the continent and making friends, but in the process they happen to encounter the invasion of an enemy country, and then a group of people rise up to resist and eventually establish their own city and jointly defeat their opponents. Is it about kingdom hegemony and romance? Sounds pretty good. It's really good. Although the energy level in this dungeon is not yet certain, the constituent elements are very rich, with various combat skills, magic, and joint skills. There are also many beasts, zombies, monsters, and demons, including kingdom hegemony, secret realm exploration, mercenary groups, legion warfare, forest academies, and exotic countries. There are also things like vampires, and the background music is also very nice. Alright. In this dungeon, there seems to be something called runes that can be embedded into a certain part of the body or weapon in a specific store, which can make people more convenient to use the power of magic. It can also give people some other abilities. It is a very magical setting. If you are tired of the monster killing and leveling mode in the Diablo dungeon, you can choose to go inside and take a walk, and your mood should be much better, eh? It sounds really exciting. You can also kill monsters and level up inside. Right, of course that's enough. A moment later, urged and surrounded by teacher Shizuka, Rachel, and others, Liang Yue came to the dungeon hall in the underground cave of the village next to the gate of the Diablo 2 dungeon. He found an empty spot and properly placed the portal to enter the dungeon. Unlike the despair, gloom, and dark style revealed in the overall plot of the Diablo dungeon, the Suikoden II that Liang Yue drew this time is a story that is more inclined to epic, struggle, passion, and friendship. The overall style is more sunny, and the constituent elements are more rich and diverse. After being transformed by the system, it should become a good place for training. It's worth exploring, not to mention, at least the original turn-based battle mode will definitely be changed. The dungeon gate of Suikoden in front of him is a place similar to a western castle gatehouse. On both sides of the wall are carved a black magic sword and a green radiant shield respectively. Okay, now let's continue to draw the public world. Sure enough, as soon as these words came out, they immediately attracted the attention of a group of young ladies. They all cast enthusiastic attention on him. System. As Liang Yue's voice fell, a special turntable in the shape of a 9-square grid appeared in front of him. The 9 grid frames respectively contained a light curtain representing different public worlds, the content of which was various and complex, representing different development directions and evolution paths. In this regard, Liang Yue just glanced at it slightly, and then directly ordered the system start. As soon as he gave the order, a blue halo began to appear inside the 9-square grid and began to wander randomly, making it impossible for people to react in just a few seconds. The movement mode of this halo has approached flickering, and even Liang Yue could not track the truth of it. However, he never expected that he could see anything from it. Stop, Ling. Congratulations to the host. In this public world selection, you have located the Storm Rider world. Please select a suitable location to place the gate of the public world. Once the plane gate lands, it cannot be moved or adjusted, and without the host's consent, no one can enter or exit through this plane gating. According to the host's existing permissions, the time flow rate between the public world and the stronghold world can be freely adjusted. Currently, the maximum time flow rate ratio between the two places is 1 to 30, or 30 to 1. Ding. The host is qualified to introduce aborigines from this public world. Currently, the host has an aborigine quota of 500 people. Ding. After the public world is opened, the task system will be covered accordingly. Please look forward to it. Storm Rider World. After seeing the final result of the selection, Liang Yue's eyes lit up. Although this option was also somewhat unsatisfactory, it was not so bad that it was bad. How is it? Is this world okay? At this time, Sayatakaji behind him leaned her head over and asked with anticipation in her tone. Not bad. This is a relatively high-end martial arts world. For me, the level is a bit low, but it is just right for your current situation. Facing the enthusiastic girls behind him, Liang Yue then shared some of the information he knew about this world with them. This world actually has azure dragons and Killin, even phoenixes and dragon turtles can be killed. The stone left over after the goddess Nuwa mended the sky can actually be forged into weapons. That is to say, those masters who have been famous in the Jianghu for a long time are probably in the Xiantian realm, and some people hidden behind the scenes, such as Emperor Shishin, should be in the foundation building realm, and those mythical beasts, their own realm may not be very high, but coupled with their racial talent, they should at least be close to the golden core stage, right? From a purely martial arts path, the system and experience inheritance in this Storm Rider world should be able to provide us with a lot of inspiration. Such a plane is indeed very suitable for our development. However, I don't want to give up the Water Margin Heroes world. After all, we have already established a sect there. No one said to give up. Besides, the plot there hasn't even started yet, and you can adjust the world's time flow rate. 1 day exchanged for a month is enough for us to cope with. But isn't there also this newly opened Suikoden dungeon? I really want to go in and stroll around dungeons or something. It shouldn't be urgent. It seems that we really have to plan the allocation of time carefully. If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, It means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 621 Cooking Plugin. A week later, the Stronghold world finished upgrading. The transparent light film surrounding the village also dissipated without a trace, and what was then presented in front of everyone was a scene of wild and primitive wilderness. Leaving aside everything else, there's the bramble tree at the village entrance, transformed from a magic seed of a 100-year-old thorn tree after experiencing 2 Stronghold world upgrades and the erosion of the River of Time. It has finally transformed into a veritable magical bramble forest. Looking out, it stretches for at least 10 miles, under the sunshine. Everywhere is densely packed with brambles and thorns reflecting metallic luster, truly making one shrink back in fear. On the branches and even on the ground, various thousand-year, several thousand-year, and even 10,000-year-old magic bramble tree seeds are scattered everywhere. These are not ordinary items, but genuine magical treasures. Those palm-sized, dull-colored, long strip-shaped seeds can instantly transform into astonishingly hard wolf-tooth clubs with a certain amount of magic power input. In its original plane, elves and druids would use it as a melee weapon to fight against foreign enemies. The longer the age of the magic bramble tree seed, the stronger its hardness. In addition, each seed, under the urging of magic power, can also be retransformed into a complete magic bramble tree, which can be used as a spellcasting material for magic trance. After a little refinement, it's a pity that this spell is a secret art of the elves and druids, and Liang Yue and others do not know how to use it. At the first moment after the Stronghold world upgrade ended, Teacher Jinxiang and Xia Azeo couldn't help but cheer and began to act separately, rushing towards the various planting areas where they had previously sown spirit herbs and spiritual seedlings. Liang Yue, on the other hand, due to scheduling reasons, had returned to school and started his daily schoolwork. However, when the system's prompt sound about the completion of the upgrade came, this guy still couldn't wait to check the situation in the Stronghold world. After several consecutive upgrades, his control over the Stronghold world had reached a very high level. In addition to being able to remotely perform various refined operations on the Stronghold world, he can also perform covered observations of the explored areas without the help of the map. Moreover, when he wants to enter the Stronghold world again, the teleportation location is no longer limited to a fixed place. All explored areas, places that can be explored by him, can be used as teleportation points relatively freely. Unfortunately, someone currently in the classroom is temporarily unable to personally experience this novel and practical landing method. Therefore, Liang Yue could only shift his attention to the newly opened mall, exclusive to the Stronghold world, summoning the system panel where the mall was located. Liang Yue's first reaction was that this thing was almost no different from his system wall, the same web game style, the antique Chinese pawnshop layout, and the rows of shelves in the back were empty. System, you're really lazy. By the way, how do I refresh this mall? Ling. Like the system mall, one item will be refreshed every 3 natural days. Purchasing the items in this mall requires spending system points. In addition, the system will also launch some discounted items in the 2 malls respectively. At that time, the host can use more affordable prices and a certain number of gems to purchase and trade goods. Yo, you've learned to do promotions, huh? Then why don't you take the opportunity to launch a product recycling function? It's the kind where I sell you something, and then you give me points. When doing business, you have to pay attention to both income and expenditure. How about it, system? Instead, it was the refreshing enlisting of a product and just a flash of white light. An item appeared in the mall. At this time it was a set of various kitchen utensils. A complete set of knives, iron pots, cutting boards, and other items were all available. Cooking plugin, an exclusive expansion component for the world, which can use any ingredients produced in this world to make corresponding food dishes. The selling price is 5,000 points. Are you kidding me? 5,000 points just to exchange for a cooking plugin? Even without it, I haven't seen a shortage of food and drink. No matter how you look at it, it's a loss. However, the system shouldn't need to lie to me, right? Could it be that there are really some other reasons here? Looking at the pile of kitchen utensils quietly placed on the shelf, Liang Yue couldn't help but fall into deep thought for a while, rubbing his chin with his fingers unconsciously. A different kind of temperament rose from his body, and his thoughts flowed, showing full charm coupled with his handsome face. It made the little diskmate who accidentally looked at him, deeply immersed in it, unable to look away for a long time. Soon, after thinking for a moment, Liang Yue finally decided to buy the set of cooking plugins. One is that he wanted to test the waters and see what level the system's newly opened mall was. Secondly, He also wanted to get a good start with the first product listed. After all, he has money in hand now. Only 5,000 points, he can afford it. Buy. So, with a thought, the goods on the shelf suddenly disappeared, and a pile of kitchen utensils appeared in his storage backpack. Along with it came a stream of information that was by no means small, including various cooking skills, recipes, spice formulas, and knowledge about the production and combination of various kitchen utensils. About 20 minutes later, accompanied by a burst of class bell ringing, Liang Yue slowly recovered from his daze. Not bad. These 5,000 points were well spent. Through the information flow attached to this cooking plugin, Liang Yue learned that this Make exclusive plugin, in addition to adding a series of cooking content to the Stronghold world, it also has a rather powerful functional characteristic. That is, it can passively retain the vitality and medicinal power contained in various ingredients. This attribute is probably like the extended version of the Make world, where food will always be fresh, not rot, and even not lose its temperature. Moreover, if the ingredients are selected properly when cooking, and the combination of various ingredients is reasonable, it can even form a certain bonus and reaction effect in the dishes. Although this effect is not as exaggerated as various elixirs, it is definitely a situation where 1 plus 1 is greater than 2. Different recipes and different combinations also correspond to different medicinal properties among them. Those recipes that the system passed on to him are actually just some relatively simple and general outlines. It's like the pre-skills of each development branch in a skill tree. It can give Liang Yue guidance in the general direction, but how to develop it later must be researched by himself, and then innovate and constantly develop new combinations and matches. For example, various medicinal diets, nourishing dishes, and various dishes configured using spiritual ingredients, etc. In addition, it is worth mentioning that with the addition of this cooking plugin, the system also sent him some branching tasks related to cooking. Just a mere plugin can bring him so many benefits. Liang Yue felt that his 5,000 points were well spent. Sweet. Chapter 622. Dr. Lizard. Hey buddy, you seemed a little distracted just now. Did something happen? Not really, just ran into some questions about cultivation. Wow. You cultivate every day? That magical technique? Yes. This kind of thing is all about perseverance. Okay, how is Bumblebee doing lately? I haven't seen him in a long time. That guy's probably with Captain America and them. A special forces unit from the military seems to be deployed nearby as well. Anyway, they've been trying to lure out another group of Bumblebee's kind and then find a way to kill them. By the way, don't run around lately, it's safest to stay in school. Director Stacy should have secretly deployed a lot of police force nearby. Yet, my dad has been leaving early and coming back late recently, looking serious. If I hadn't heard Sam and Michaela talk about that big guy thing, I would have thought terrorists had sneaked into New York. What's about to happen is no easier than dealing with terrorists. Fortunately, this time it's a multi-department collaboration, so I believe those guys should eventually be taken care of. I don't think things will be that simple. After all, they are a bunch of big guys who can not only transform, but also have heavy firepower. More importantly, we still don't know how many of them there are. That's right, a high-intensity military confrontation is probably unavoidable. If it really happens in New York, it would be a disaster if we could deploy in advance. Like last time, when Michaela and I ran into Liang Yue's house, that guy was almost wiped out in one encounter. But the situation in the city is more complicated. Even if it's handled well, some ordinary people are very likely to get caught up in it, so the safest way now is to lure them out of the city, right? Liang Yue, what do you think about this? The military, and those people from S.H.I.E.L.D., should ask you for some support, right? They won't let me participate. If possible, those people don't even want me to have anything to do with Bumblebee and them. After all, I'm Chinese, and I have some background. Oh, that's too bad. I'd rather trust you, buddy, than those people from the government. Thanks for your trust, but Stark should be involved this time, if nothing else. He's always been very interested in the wreckage of those big guys. Moreover, to ensure the timeliness of the information, I also sponsored him one of those panoramic sand tables you saw last time, right? With that sand table, we should be able to quickly lock onto them once those guys show up. Does Mr. Stark also have an electromagnetic cannon like the one in your house? Technically, they're not that different, but he can't deploy those things along the streets. Besides, Stark likes to fly around in an iron suit. Although the armor also has an electromagnetic cannon, its power is definitely not as great as the land-based model. From your understanding, isn't there any good news? There is. These days, The military seems to be mobilizing a batch of missile destroyers, and the nearby military base seems to be full of various combat aircraft ready to take off. I don't think that's good news. That's right, if you really use that kind of weapon, the number of casualties will definitely be higher. Hey guys, what do you think about us taking the initiative on this matter? You mean, by leaking the information, and then actively attracting those things to other places? Yes. That's what I mean. Don't be reckless, Sam. Before Bumblebee's teammates arrive, it's just, with the habitual thinking of these students, what good ideas can they come up with? Either they are at a loss, or they are whimsical, self-destructing in place, and want to put their lives in it at every turn. The method of actively luring the enemy in is not impossible, but the problem now is that it has not yet developed to that extent. Think about it, a group of bigwigs who claim to have the strongest military power on Earth. If they really have to sacrifice a few students in exchange for victory, where are they going to put their faces? The current situation is that although many high-level members of the United States have not grasped the specific movements, traces, and numbers of the Decepticons, typically, the enemy is in the dark and we are in the light, but in their hands, they also have something that the other party is bound to get in addition. Now it is a home game, so it is not the turn of these students to make decisions. Help, there's a monster over there. Run. Run, get out of here. Quick, Jack, Fiona. At this moment, just as the group of friends in front of them were engaged in a heated discussion about the upcoming Transformers incident, actively speaking and arguing endlessly, a burst of noisy sounds suddenly came from not far away. The location of the riot seemed to be in the teaching building. A large number of students were coming out of the gate in a panic, pushing and grabbing each other. Some simply climbed out of the classroom windows, using their hands and feet, crawling and screaming. What happened over there? It seems like there's some kind of monster, a big lizard, looks like it was transformed from a person, about 3 meters tall, with a big tail behind it. Faced with everyone's questions, Liang Yue glanced around and gave the answer, then split his fingers, and a tree trunk about the thickness of a wrist and more than a meter long fell into his palm. After a burst of flying debris, the bark automatically fell off, turning directly into a wooden stick. After all, he's in school now. If Liang Yue doesn't want to be watched by his classmates as a monkey in the future, it's better to keep a low-profile. Roar. At this moment, a big guy suddenly broke through the door and rushed out from inside the teaching building, accompanied by scattered glass shards. A pair of yellowish-brown eyes scanned the crowd randomly a few times, and just like that, it came straight towards Liang Yue and others. To be precise, looking at the posture of the other party, it seems to be rushing towards Peter and Gwen. His eyes were firm, his gaze was persistent, and his deformed lizard face was full of crazy desire, so much so that, in the lizard man's sight at this moment, it seems that he can no longer tolerate other people, and does not notice other people. Just like that, he ran rampant, all the way breaking through the flower beds next to the teaching building, knocking down the trash cans on the side of the road, opening his mouth wide, swinging his tail, jumping towards this side. Then, before he could realize it, Liang Yue hit him on the back of the head with a stick. Only a muffled sound of dong was heard, and the lizard man suddenly fell into the grass, never able to climb up again. Throwing the wooden stick in his hand casually, Liang Yue then took out a dagger, the sharp tip of the knife gently along the back of his head and spine, easily cutting open the scales and muscles on the lizard man's back. Then, he just reached out and grabbed a neck, and pulled the person out of the flesh of this thing. Blonde hair, bare back, thin body, pale skin, and his right arm is still in a state. Professor Connors, Gwen and Peter recognized the person almost at a glance, and Sam on the side also thought the other person was familiar. After all, they had just visited the Osborne group during spring break, and during this period, due to the special identities of Peter's parents, and the fact that he and Gwen awakened their mutated spider powers almost at the same time, there must be constant involvement between these people. Liang Yue can find the deeds of the two Spider-Man rampant in New York, punishing evil and promoting good, on Xiao Wu's Avatar's Urban Express every morning. Chapter 623 finalized the cooperation. And so, a serious campus disturbance was quelled the moment Liang Yue knocked out the large lizard. The students who had scattered and fled in panic began to calm down and peer from a distance. Some of the bolder students also emerged from various nooks and crannies, slowly gathering around. After putting down Professor Connors and handing him over to Peter and Gwen, Liang Yue immediately called Natasha. Hey Liang Yue. Hello, Natasha. Are you calling about the large lizard? Oh? You already know. In fact, during this time, whether it's us, the military, or the New York Police Department, We've all been monitoring the situation at the school and I've secretly deployed a lot of people around. Probably within 5 minutes, Captain, Coulson, and Bumblebee will arrive, but Director Stacy should arrive on the scene before us. Okay, since you guys already understand the situation here, then hold on, our director wants to talk to you. Hello Liang Yue. Hello, Director Fury. The reason I'm interrupting your conversation with Natasha is because I want to ask how much you personally know about Dr. Connors. Not much. Tell me a little bit. Osborne Industries has always invested a lot in biology, probably research oriented towards Captain Steve. Some time ago, they had internal problems coupled with a failure to secure military orders. There were some changes in the board of directors, and Dr. Connors' biological research project was cut. This scholar seems kind and open-minded on the surface, but he has always been concerned about his missing right arm, so he ventured to inject a strengthening agent containing lizard genes. The purpose was to repair his own defect. Now it seems that this agent is not perfect then. How much do you think is the probability of success for this agent? I don't know. I haven't done research in this field of cross-species genes, but if it's just to repair his right hand, my laboratory can already do it. You mean limb regeneration, disability restoration? Oh, are there any side effects? There are no side effects whatsoever, the kind that can comprehensively repair the body. That's right. The progress is so fast. The last time I was in your basement, it hadn't reached this level, had it? Although the repair fluid you brought back last time was indeed very good. That's great. Thank you for your understanding, Liang Yue. I will find a time to visit your home specifically regarding the cooperation between us. I think it would be better to achieve it through some intermediaries, such as Aunt Liu and Stark. After all, my home is not a professional medical facility. You have the final say on this matter. When I go to visit next time, I will invite Ms. Liu and Stark to be there together. Then there's no problem. Goodbye. Goodbye, Mr. Liang Yue. Just as Liang Yue finished the call, the students in the school had plucked up their courage and came within 10 meters of them, crowding the area. Several friends from the swordsmanship club even came to his side, curiously touching the skin of the big lizard, or picking up the wooden stick that someone had used to knock out the big guy, carefully weighing it afterwards. When they looked at Liang Yue, their eyes began to change. You knocked it out with this thing. A well-proportioned black man with muscles all over his body looked at him with surprise while holding the wooden stick. It takes some skill. Liang Yue heard this, smiled, and spread his hands. Unless it's the kind of skill in your Chinese martial arts movies, otherwise I don't believe it. Another slightly shorter, but very lean Spanish guy shook his head with his arms folded as he spoke. An ear-piercing siren began to sound on the periphery. Soon, a group of fully armed special operations personnel, led by Director Stacy himself, jogged all the way. The first thing they did after arriving was to disperse the onlookers and clear the scene. In the end, only Liang Yue and Gwen were left to summarize and supplement the case itself. Actually, it doesn't need to be so troublesome at all. After all, according to Natasha, in recent times, several violent agencies in the United States have deployed a lot of people around the school. Secret monitoring equipment covers the entire campus. In this situation, the appearance of this large lizard was already grasped by SHIELD, the military, and the New York Police Department at the first time. However, this matter involves abnormal power, and it is not within the jurisdiction of the New York Police Department. Therefore, Dr. Lizard can only choose a place of belonging between SHIELD and the military in the end. Director Stacy and others are at most here to make a cameo and file a record like Connors, who already possesses considerable scientific research achievements and has always been at the forefront of the times in his field of expertise. This time, with the help of his transformation into a big lizard, he directly jumped from behind the scenes to the front of the stage. Although for some reasons, the development of the transformation agent is not perfect enough, and some problems occurred in the middle, causing a panic effect on the campus and threatening the lives of the students. But he has at least personally demonstrated to people his phased achievements in this research direction. Therefore, an expert scholar like this, who is full of creativity, dares to boldly improve, and puts it into action, is obviously not to be equated with those pure villains. If Liang Yue guessed correctly, in the future trajectory of his life, Dr. Connors probably doesn't have to worry about his research funding anymore. At most, his personal freedom will be restricted to a certain extent before he comes up with definite research results. Soon, in the roar of a strong engine, a yellow sports car arrived at the scene, followed by two people getting out of the car. One of them is Captain America, Steve Rogers, who has already trimmed his hair, shaved his beard, and is dressed in special combat uniform. The other is Liang Yue's long-lost agent neighbor, Coulson. But the matter is not over yet. In less than half a minute, a military helicopter arrived at the scene. This time, the military personnel participated subsequently, These two parties began to argue and negotiate in front of Director Stacy and the unconscious Dr. Connors, and even tried to use force to coerce each other several times. In short, everything is as Liang Yue expected before. Chapter 624 Ms. Betty. After school in the afternoon, Liang Yue didn't go straight home, but went to the apartment he rented near the school, took the car from the parking lot, and drove all the way quickly. In just over 10 minutes, he returned to his home. More precisely, he returned to the home he had when he first came to the United States. After more than half a year of reconstruction and renovation, the house that had been bombed by someone was finally repaired. Although the scale is almost the same as the original house type, the interior layout, workmanship, and even the quality of a series of furniture and appliances have been quietly improved by several grades. In addition, in the wardrobe and jewelry box of this property, more than a dozen sets of various suits tailored to his body shape, as well as a whole box of valuable watches, were placed very considerately. At first glance, it is very bright and showy. Unfortunately, Liang Yue has passed that age. Now he is no longer the pure high school student who just arrived. These seemingly good industrialized objects can no longer cause any emotional fluctuations in his heart. However, now that the house has been built, he naturally still has to live in it. After all, this is his home. Therefore, this completely new property has once again become Liang Yue's foothold near the school. Coulson, who is in the same block, has also become his neighbor again. After putting the car in the garage, Liang Yue selected a relatively pleasing sports watch from the watch box in the bedroom, then put it in a box and put it in his storage space. Speaking of which, although famous watches are nothing to Liang Yue, they are a good choice for giving gifts abroad. Peter's birthday is in a few days, and Liang Yue plans to use it as a birthday gift. Well, I'll go and process a few women's watches. The style should be more beautiful, and you can use the gems in the collection room as you like. Are they also for gifts, Master? Yes, in addition to those female classmates who have a good relationship with me, I also want to give them to Betty and Elizabeth. Image style has been confirmed. May I ask, Master, are there any special requirements for the functions of the watch? No requirements, just the ordinary type suitable for women to carry around. Understood. The precision manufacturing equipment has been activated, and the first women's watch is expected to be completed in 13 seconds, soon. Liang Yue selected a small women's watch from a series of virtual preview models given by Xiao through visual inspection. The deep red flawless gemstone watch face, matched with a smooth color of light gold transparent metal, and two corn-sized white gemstones are inlaid on both sides of the strap when exposed to the sun. It's so shiny and colorful. In short, it is the kind that is amazing at first glance and very beautiful. Of course, the workmanship is also very exquisite, representing Xiao's high-end level in the field of machinery compared to the functionality of this watch. It is actually more of a piece of jewelry. After making it, Liang Yue took it in his hand and looked at it, and felt that it was not bad, so he put it in a box. Then he directly drew a circle in the void and came to the vicinity of Stark Tower in one step. That's right, he's here to find Betty this time. Ever since the last time they separated outside the Stark Expo, this woman has been acting up with Liang Yue. The reason is probably because that night, after experiencing a not-so-fierce crisis, someone didn't stay to accompany her. Although everything was under Liang Yue's control at the time, and Ivan Vanko was unable to make any waves from beginning to end. However, after the incident ended, Liang Yue's move to take the girls shopping and watching movies made Betty very unhappy, so from that time on, she entered a period of Cold War with him. During this period, Liang Yue didn't answer any phone calls. Although it doesn't seem long according to the time, in reality, Liang Yue felt that he still had to smooth out this knot as soon as possible. In this way, Liang Yue, with a pure and beautiful heart of atonement, stepped into Stark Tower with his gift. Then, after about half an hour, he pulled out Betty, who had an unwilling expression on her face, but upon closer inspection, seemed to be welcoming him. The process was relatively smooth apart from a middle-aged male researcher in the laboratory who ran out to confront Liang Yue, wanting to use his position to prevent him from taking Betty away. Not much twists and turns happened. The middle-aged man who is the deputy director of the laboratory was said to have just divorced recently, but the slightly depressed scientific research environment failed to suppress his sultry personality. Then, he turned his attention to Betty. Then, in just a few words, Liang Yue choked him there faced with the obstruction of this scientific researcher. Liang Yue stated at the beginning that he was Betty's boyfriend and was here to pick up his girlfriend from get off work. As a result, the other party still seemed unwilling, and seemed to want to show off his identity and knowledge to him, and tried to continue to fight for it in this way. Then Liang Yue directly stated that in addition to being a boyfriend, he was also a shareholder of Stark Industries and could attend board meetings. After speaking, He patted the other party on the shoulder and left with Betty in the slightly stiff eyes of the deputy director. After going out, the two of them strolled and talked and laughed during the meal. Liang Yue took out the gift box containing the watch and put it on her wrist in Betty's surprised eyes. After eating, Liang Yue sent Betty home very gentlemanly, and then faced with a lady's coffee invitation, he took the opportunity to spend the night at her house. Time flies, and in the blink of an eye, a week has passed. During this period, Liang Yue continued to attend classes during the day, and went home to accompany Hinata, Xiaozhao and others to run dungeons at night, and occasionally ran to the water margin hero world for a stroll. For the two newly selected dungeons and public worlds, the women's side has not yet officially decided to open them because they have placed a lot of expectations on them. They seem particularly cautious for this reason. The women even held a special meeting to discuss this matter. The final consensus reached was that they had to clear the hell difficulty dungeon of Diablo 2 first, and then open a new dungeon and a new world. So during this period, Teacher Shizuka and others once again entered the rhythm of burying themselves in clearing levels, fighting monsters and upgrading. In comparison, Liang Yue is not relaxed either. At this time, he has begun to study the refining principles and techniques of foundation establishment pills. Although this guy believes that with a blessing of the innate image of thunder, fire and wood, his control over flames far exceeds that of other alchemists. The wooden alchemy furnace constructed with the wood attribute spiritual power also naturally has a strong control over flames, but out of caution, Liang Yue still seemed a little cautious at this time, trying his best to prepare for refining the foundation establishment pill. Chapter 625 Optimus Prime arrives. After this upgrade of the Stronghold world, Liang Yue's gains were quite substantial, leaving aside everything else. Just the various spiritual herbs and plants that they had previously sown yielded a great harvest. What were originally just 1 or 2, 3 or 4 seeds or small seedlings, after the upgrade was completed and the accelerated time flow ended, actually directly multiplied into a large patch. 1 became 100, 100 became 1,000. Just like weeds and trees, they climbed all over the mountains and plains. There were also spiritual plant seeds that were spread in all directions by the wind, rain, and various insects and birds. Some spiritual fruits, during the flowering process, even scattered pollen everywhere, unintentionally spreading it to many different species, triggering mutations in the surrounding plants. Although, in this process, due to the long time and lack of care, some snakes, insects, rats, and ants sneaked into the plantation, bringing some losses, but overall not a big problem. Moreover, for some spiritual crops with good medicinal properties and efficacy that could catch his eye, his mother would also help take care of them as appropriate. Before, when Liang Yue and others went to various medicinal gardens to pick herbs, they had discovered the existence of some abruptly established protective formations. After realizing this, Liang Yue, that guy, also climbed up the pole. He sent another message to his mother, expressing his longing for her, and confessing his filial impiety for not being able to serve her in the past. To fulfill his filial duty, in short, Liang Yue finally successfully obtained the book called Basic Array Formations from his mother. The formations, spells, and techniques recorded in it were not profound, and were even slightly inferior to the array formations attached to the refining technique he had obtained before. But this was exactly what Liang Yue needed most at the moment. Without anything else, if he had these array formations earlier, the consumption of various spiritual herbs and the impact of external factors during the upgrade of the Stronghold world would have been greatly reduced. However, it's not too late now. After picking a batch of spiritual herbs of mediocre age, Liang Yue included the original plantation areas in his observation range through the newly unlocked aerial viewing ability. He would take a look every few days, and then send a few sword lights over to achieve the preventive effect on various insects, beasts, and birds. Why not directly set up array formations in the surrounding areas? Firstly, he doesn't know how to use them yet, and secondly, he doesn't have spirit stones, so even if he knew, he couldn't use them. One day, in the afternoon, Liang Yue had just walked out of the campus after school when the intelligent Xiao sent a signal, saying that someone had entered his manor. Opening the surveillance video, he saw Nick Fury, General Ross, Stark, Captain America, Natasha, Bumblebee, Simmons from Sector 7, and others pushing the door open, getting out of the car, and arriving at the small square in front of his house. Seeing this, a trace of thought flashed in Liang Yue's eyes, and in a flash of thought, he had already guessed their intention. Is it time for Optimus Prime and the others to descend? With this conclusion, Liang Yue quickly came to a small alley in a corner of the street, drew a circle, and returned to his manor in one step. Welcome to my home. Everyone stepping out of the light circle, Liang Yue appeared on the platform outside his castle. In the next moment, looking at the uninvited group of people below. Although he was a little displeased in his heart, he still offered a set of welcome words. "I'm sorry to bother you, Liang Yue, but the time has come. Some alien friends will arrive soon. Bumblebee has already set the coordinates at your home last time." Natasha took the initiative to greet him at this time, intimately wrapping her arms around his arm and explaining in his ear, "Is that so? Then this matter is ultimately related to me. It seems that your long-standing plan is not working." Saying that, Liang Yue glanced at Natasha beside him, and then, under the gaze of everyone around, walked straight to Bumblebee. He patted its hood and said, "Now that your friends are coming, what are your plans for the future, buddy?" According to Optimus Prime, the purpose of our coming to Earth this time is to stop the Decepticons' conspiracy, and then find a suitable place to live. Along with a burst of clicking mechanical sound, Bumblebee's body twisted and transformed into a roboto. "It seems that your voice system has been repaired. This is Mr. Stark's credit." "Don't be polite, buddy. We are comrades in arms, aren't we?" "Why do you say that? If you want to survive on Earth, you must be prepared to be persecuted." The mainstream culture on Earth has not yet developed to the point where it can accept the coexistence of different races. We humans have many internal conflicts. For you aliens, staying here will make you the target of public criticism. Okay, no one here wants to hurt them. General Ross walked over at this time, looking at Liang Yue with a serious face. "Your promise has no validity." Looking at the little old man in front of him, Liang Yue twitched a corner of his mouth, revealing a bright white of his teeth, and then he looked at Bumblebee and continued, "If you have nowhere to go in the future, you can come to me." After speaking, Liang Yue waved his hand to the side, and the round table he used last time suddenly appeared, with many chairs scattered around. Seeing this, everyone sat down one after another. However, perhaps realizing that Liang Yue did not welcome them, Natasha did not take the liberty to run into the room to get any drinks and fruits to entertain herself. This time a group of people just sat there dryly. However, Stark next to him was obviously not polite to him, and directly hummed a little tune and ran into the villa, taking out a bottle of wine and several goblets. Liang Yue, on the other hand, took out the basic array formations book given by his mother and slowly studied it through. Some things that have happened recently. He also deeply felt that the people around him were a bit insufficient and urgently needed to replenish fresh blood. Fortunately, the distribution of a large number of indigenous quotas gave him a way to independently recruit subordinates. In addition, he might also be able to form a team with Sam, Little Spider, and others. The sky gradually darkened, and under the control of the intelligent Xiao, the lights in the manor were slowly lit. After a while, when everyone present began to feel a little impatient, a fire suddenly cut through the sky, falling from the other end of the horizon from afar like a meteorite. It drew a beautiful arc in the atmosphere, heading towards New York City. The orbit changed several times, but the speed was neither fast nor slow. When it was about to land, the meteorite wrapped in flames suddenly split into more than a dozen pieces, and finally scattered throughout New York. DD. Report to the master. Sam seems to be in danger. A mechanical life suspected of being a Decepticon is trying to attack him at this moment. The rainbow light suddenly flashed on Liang Yue's watch, and the intelligent Xiao also sent an alarm. End of this chapter. Thank you so much for reading until the end. Don't forget to give it a like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription or donation encourages us to continue. Thank you all. See you in the next video.